The following is a presentation from the MJCast, the internet's premier podcast on all things Michael Jackson.
I'm a Black American. I am proud of who I am.
Together, we can make a change in the world. I want to see you!
I like to take sounds and put them under the microscope.
There's a driving bass, you become the bass. Let the music write itself.
I don't sing it if I don't mean it.
Welcome to the MJCast, your source of news, discussion, and interviews on the King of Pop.
Hello and welcome to the Season 8 Christmas special of the MJCast. I'm your host for today, Elise Capron, and I'm so honored to be joined by our entire MJCast team, plus a very special guest who I will introduce in a moment. First, let me say how exciting it is to have everyone here. Our Christmas special is an annual tradition where we bring our entire team together to discuss Michael Jackson news and have some fun fan chat, but also to reflect on the year that was, on all the great moments of this past season of the show. I think we can all say that it's been an incredible year and a pretty wild ride. And speaking of our podcast team, I'm thrilled to be joined by my colleagues who are based all around the world, and I have to say, getting everyone onto one time that works for everybody to record with all our time zones is quite a feat in itself. First, the wonderful founder of our show and our primary host, Jamon Bull, signing in from Studio Brisbane. Hey, Jamon, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Elise?
Good. And then we have our incredible teammate, investigative journalist Charles Thomson, who is based in the UK. Charlie, you've become so important to the podcast, and you've done phenomenal work co-hosting and supporting us on some of our most important interviews going all the way back to 2015. Hi, Charlie.
I think that's quite an intro. Thanks very much. Pleasure to be here, as always.
You know we love you. You're also Father Charles Miss, so we're especially glad to have you here. And of course, we also have our other Charlie Carter, who's signing in from Sydney, also in Australia, of course. Carter has truly saved us more than once with his support as our audio producer and editor, and has also become a fantastic co-host in his own right on many episodes as well. Carter, we're so grateful to you. And how are you doing over there, Carter?
Not too bad, thank you. And that's a hell of a wrap for myself as well. So you really do love all the Charlies.
I do love all the Charlies and all the Jamons too. I only know one Jamon, but he's extra special. And last but certainly not least, I'm honored to introduce our guest for today, who has become a regular on our Christmas extravaganza episodes, having joined us for the last couple of years, Taj Jackson. Taj, it means the world to us that you take the time to join us each year, especially knowing how busy the holidays can be. Thank you so much. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, well, we could not be more excited ourselves. So we're thrilled to jump into some news from the world of Michael Jackson. But first, I want to briefly thank everyone who listened to the show this past year, who supported us and sent us ideas, news tips, and more. And thank you as well to all of our special guests whose stories make this podcast what it is and which help add to the King of Pop's legacy. We love this podcast project, and we are all so honored to get to be a part of it and could not do it without your support. With that in mind, just a reminder to subscribe on any podcast app and to rate us wherever you can, as that helps new listeners find us. Plus, of course, you can engage with us online under the name The MJCast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or at themjcast.com. We love hearing from you. Now let's get on with the show. We've got a lot of great news topics to discuss. So first of all, tell me how you guys are doing and how things are going leading up to Christmas. It's next weekend, or is everybody freaking out trying to get presents and wrap things up?
I haven't even started yet. I haven't even started Christmas shopping. And
Carter.
As we record this, it's the 18th. I know my wife is very disappointed in me, and quite rightly so.
Have you been a little busy with something, have you, Carter?
Just a lot, yeah. Yeah. Lots of editing, lots of work, doing crazy overtime hours at work. And yeah, just looking forward to recording this one, to be honest. It's always a special listen to the Christmas episode, so to be on it is a special honor.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I do have to say we've had a lot on our plate. You guys, I mean, I've been kind of slacking, but the Charlies and Jamon have been recording like fiends and editing, and it's been completely nuts lately. So, we also thank all of our listeners too for their patience as we've gotten out some of our really big episodes towards the end of the season. And thank you to you guys for all your hard work you've been putting in.
It's an absolute pleasure.
It's what we do.
And Charlie, is it snowing over there in the UK?
It's not snowing, but it has. So a week ago it snowed. We got a real huge dumping of snow, and the temperature here has not risen above freezing since then. So we've just had that. It's just been here for a week, and certainly on all the pavements, the sidewalks, as American listeners will know them, where people have been walking up and down them for a week. It's just all been trodden down into like sheet ice now. It's just treacherous. You can't really walk anywhere faster than about 1 mile an hour, because if you do, you'll go arse over tit. So it's it's been fun. People have been abandoning their cars, and there's been tons of crashes. People trying to drive up hills and then they just slide backwards down the hill. It's been a mess.
Oh my God.
I've seen in my hometown down in Devon as well, they had to abandon the bus, I think, because it went up a particular road on its route that wasn't salted. They didn't grit the road, so the bus got stuck.
Yeah, it has been whack. It's ridiculous, really. You'd think that after however many years of existence, the country would have learned how to deal with a bit of snow. But no, especially when you look at Canada, for example, and they have like feet of snow every year and everything just works as normal.
Well, the opposite of streets with grit on them, Taj, how's your Christmas going here in Southern California?
It's going great. Actually, I'm going somewhere in the snow for Christmas.
Oh, nice.
I don't want to divulge the location
Sure.
but yeah, I'm really excited about that and going with family. And so it should be a lot of fun.
You could tell us and we'll beep it.
Can I tell you off the air?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it should be a lot of fun. My kids haven't been in snow yet, so that's going to be exciting.
Nice. Are they excited about the whole Christmas experience? Are they into it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Christmas is a big one for us. Halloween and Christmas are like the two big ones.
That's awesome. And it's been pretty cold here in SoCal. So, Taj, I'm in San Diego, and I have been freezing.
Yeah, I have a heat dish right on me right now as we're talking. So it's quiet, though, so that's good.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, we might not have snow, but I've been so cold.
What's a heat dish?
It's like a fan, but it's a heater. It looks like a circular fan, but I guess emits a lot of heat.
Right.
Yeah.
We would not survive in London, Charlie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't do well in cold.
I've never seen snow. I've still never seen snow. I'm 36.
Really?
You've never seen snow ever in your
Never.
life? Wow.
Ever.
Well, this might blow your minds, but every country I've ever lived in, my first Christmas in that country was white with snow, including Australia.
Wow.
Really? Where did it snow in Australia?
I was down in Melbourne in 2006 and I had snow up to my knees. Granted, we had to climb a hill or a mountain to get to it, but it was crazy. I remember my cousin on the morning, it was raining and horrible, and she looked up at the mountains, let out an expletive and went, "That's snow." So we drove up there and had a look at it. And then 2 days later, I got sunburnt through my jeans at the MCG watching England be terrible at cricket.
Awesome. I love that.
I was going to ask Taj how his little family's going. Are they growing up nicely and
Yeah.
everyone's happy and healthy?
Yeah, it's fun juggling two kids. They're amazing. I wake up and I feel so blessed just to have, kids and, such wonderful kids as I do. And so, yeah, I'm having a lot of fun, not as much sleep as I normally would get, but I didn't get much sleep anyway, but yeah, I'm getting less than that. But I look at my dad differently because I know he had three of us, and it's just, I can imagine the amount of work that he had to do at that point in general. So obviously my mom as well, but my dad was also on the road a lot and stuff like that.
Still planning for number 3?
Yeah, I would love a number 3. 3 is the lucky number for me.
Taj, I have to tell you, this is completely silly, but my husband and I watch Wheel of Fortune. He really is into Wheel of Fortune. We watch it like every single day. And I swear to God, anytime anyone picks the letter T there are always 3 T's, like every time.
I have to start watching that because, yeah.
And every time it comes up, I'm like, 3T yet again. So, yes, 3 is the lucky number.
Yeah, 3 is the lucky number, especially with T's. Yeah.
Yes. That is very exciting. Cool. Well, and then, Jamon, we didn't really get to hear from you. Are you guys prepping for Christmas too over there?
Oh, yeah, big time. It's pretty hectic in the Bull household at the moment. Similar to Taj, having 2 kids is a whole different ball game we're finding. We thought we didn't have much time with 1 kid, but 2 kids is just, a next level of crazy. So lots of busyness looking after the kids. My wife hasn't been too well either. She's been quite sick in and out of hospital, but now on the road to recovery, thank goodness, which is nice. And then, of course, we're through all of that, we're trying to edit these episodes. As we record now, we have the goal of getting 4 episodes out over the next week, which we have never done before. Yeah. Usually it's been 1 a month or 1 every 2 weeks at a max. And now we're in a position where we've got 4 episodes that we need to somehow get out. But we've got a whole team of people around the world working on it. We got people in Texas, Australia. It's all happening. So hopefully we can achieve it. Hey, Carter?
Absolutely. It's a labor of love. It's very hard work and long hours to do an edit, but what we get at the end of it, I think the results are clear for all to see. This season has been truly outstanding.
It really, really has. And yeah, I don't know how you guys do all you do with having kids in tow and busy jobs and all that, but thank you guys so much for all the time you've been putting in, and good luck to us all in getting these episodes out.
Oh my God. We're going to need it.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm standing by to do my little social media art and website text, so I'm ready.
Just watch out, Charlie Thomson, you'll be editing next as well. So
I keep saying, I wish I could help do audio editing, but I don't think you guys would want me to attempt that. I think it'd be a big disaster. So.
Well, Charlie pretends like he can't do it, but then one of our episodes is that World Music Award documentary one that he did. He pulled that one out of the bag after pretending he was a bit of a Luddite.
Yeah.
Well, have you listened to that recently? Because it does sound like it was recorded through a potato. I mean, it's not.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and jump in? We have a lot of news to get through and some other topics to discuss. So for all this, chat about Christmas, yay, ho, 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 happy Santa Day, I actually want to backtrack a little bit to Halloween because we didn't really get a chance on the show to discuss the amazing Thriller Night party, and 3 of the 5 of us on this recording were there for that night. So I'd love to talk a little bit about this party, which of course listeners will know is an annual party held at the famous Jackson family home, Havenhurst in Encino. And it was held this year on Halloween weekend, 2 nights actually, on October 28th and 29th. And it is also a fundraiser. It benefits the Heal Alay Foundation as well as the D.D. Jackson Foundation. And Taj, actually, I would love to start with you because you are so deeply involved in this party. Maybe you can tell us, just to start, a little bit more about it from your perspective, like exactly, kind of the scope of what it benefits, some of those details. I'd love to hear directly from you.
Yeah, the party's interesting because, we start planning for it. We started in February, actually meeting about it and started planning for it and the committees and stuff like that. It is something that takes a long time to put together in that way because it is a small unit working on it. And it was a lot of work in itself, just in terms of managing all this stuff. It's one of those things that when you said I was there, I think I was physically there. Mentally, I don't know where I was because it was it was so overwhelming in a good way. I was so happy that everyone came and everyone enjoyed it. But at the same time, it's just, there's so many moving parts and stuff like that. So I was talking to Prince the other day and it's the same thing. It's we're just recovering from it. We're still in that recovery mode, even months after. But yeah, it was a great 2 nights. 3 if you count the children, the children day that we did as well, which is probably the most rewarding part of the whole weekend for us. But yeah, it's important because obviously it benefits our charities, which we do a lot of work in loss and grief. And then Prince and John Muto do a lot of work with helping all of LA and stuff like that, whether it's feeding the homeless or giving gifts to children during Christmas time. So we felt good that this was going to be kind of a family charity event in that way. But at the same time, it is a lot of work, and you have to keep reminding yourself what the end goal is in that. Mm-hmm. Oh, and so I forgot, and obviously this year was the 40th anniversary of Thriller, so there was reason to celebrate, and that was also like the cherry on top.
Absolutely. I think you guys I think you always go all out for this party, but this year you really went all out for the Thriller 40 celebration.
Yeah, definitely. It was an excuse to do that, but at the same time, we knew that this is, my uncle and Prince's dad, and he deserved it, mm-hmm. and he deserves that honor. And we also knew that the media was going to be sluggish to do it, so we were going to do it before they did it.
It was amazing to watch from the outside looking in. I couldn't be there. Hopefully one day I'll be able to go. But I tell you what, just the amount of people that seem to go every year of, people that worked with Michael or Jackson family members seems to grow every year. This year there were people there like John Landis and Matt Forger. And I'm curious to know how security plays into it, because there's a lot of people on that property at that time that are, influential, important people. Do you have to really take that seriously?
Yeah, I mean, there is always a concern for security, but at the same time, we vet a lot of people first in that way. So we're always looking to make sure that the people that go through those gates are people that we can trust in terms of not having to worry about that kind of things. And we've been very blessed that that's been the case in that, because yes, I think everyone else, we try and make a family atmosphere. When you're walking around the property, everyone is treated the same. Everyone walking through those gates is important and is part of the family. And so that's how we approach it.
Well, there definitely is a family feeling to this party. And I would like to talk actually about some of the fun details. But first, I want to say that I was reflecting on the party a few days after the fact, and I kind of to what you're saying, Taj, what I felt was really special about it is that, I've been to my share of fundraisers over the years, right? Which this at the heart is a fundraiser, of course. But what makes it so special is that everyone, you guys, the organizers, everyone who has put so much time into making it happen, and everyone who attended, the VIP guests, the fans, there is just such love in the air for Michael Jackson and his family and everyone who has made this party possible that it is, I think, just one of the warmest, most genuine, most fun, love-filled events I have ever been to in my life, let alone just one of the most fun parties I've ever been to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That means a lot, because we that's what we aim for. That's the most important part of that is you would be surprised at the people we've turned away in terms of whether it's celebrity or influencers that don't have they're not there for the right reasons in that way. And so they don't get invited. And then what we look for, or what I should say I've looked for in terms of invites to those kind of people, is basically, were they there at the toughest times? Mm. Did they support Michael? Did they support our family? And they move up to the top of the list right away. We don't go off of this is an A-lister, B-lister, or C-lister. I go off of, does this person support the family in that way, he or she? And that is my priority in that way, because that's the kind of people that I would want on the property dancing and celebrating, are the people that were there at the toughest times.
Can I ask, Taj, for people like myself who are considering going in future, especially for overseas, what exactly is the process to obtain a ticket to come to this event?
It changes every year, so that's why I laugh. And that way we're still trying to figure that out, because this is a charity event, so at the same, it's kind of goes under that donation aspect of it, but it is almost like a first come, first serve, when the tickets are announced. And there's only a limited amount because at the same time, we don't want this to get out of control. As it is, we're raising money for both charities in that. So there's not really a process at one point. There's just the tickets go on sale and those tickets represent a donation of a certain amount. And that fluctuates in terms of depending on what number we come up with, where it's a good donation. But at the same time, we feel like it's worth that person's money in that way to come to this event, because we know a lot of people are traveling from overseas. So we're trying to give them something that they'll never experience again in that way. And trying to bring people, as you said, people in the Michael universe that they'll never probably get to meet elsewhere.
So my experience of buying the tickets was just that they posted on Facebook with the Heal LA Foundation page and made it pretty clear when they were available. So, we can definitely on our accounts share next year as soon as those become available. But I absolutely, to every fan who's considered going, I 100% support getting there at least once in your life. It's a great cause, great people. I love what you said, Taj, about you guys really thinking about who you want to invite. I think that was very obvious that you guys had put care into that. And there were so many fantastic VIP guests. I mean, well, of course, you were there. Your brother TJ was there. Prince was there. BG was there. I believe Paris was there the first night. And then, Kevin Dorsey, Travis Payne, Sugarfoot, Matt Forger. There were
Chris Tucker.
so many people, so many VIP guests, and a lot of interesting surprise VIP guests too. Like I remember Salif, the French moonwalker guy dancer, was there, and it was so much fun watching him dance on the dance floor you guys had set up with the full scale thriller short film movie theater. It was incredible, and he was so happy, and it was phenomenal. But I could probably list for an hour all the special guests. It was amazing. But they were all everyone was so friendly, everyone was dancing, everyone was happy. There were all kinds of activities set up, and games and food and zombies walking around. You guys had done the entire second floor of the house as a maze that I screamed through the entire thing. It was. I'm
happy you screamed. Yeah.
Oh, I screamed my head off. I think I truly annoyed my husband.
You were scared, weren't you?
I like that.
It was great though. It was, and then also some new features. Oh, and I guess I should explain too. Back up a tiny bit is the way it's set up at Havenhurst, which this was my first time going to Havenhurst, which is such a beautiful home. Oh my goodness. It is so special and so gorgeous. And just also the property is humongous. I didn't realize how big, what a big piece of land it really is on. But you walk in and you walk down the driveway and there are just all these photos of Michael that are just big kind of life-size, big posters on the fences. And then you walk up to the house and it's so beautifully lit up. And there are just in every corner of the house and the property. And then you walk into the patio area with, of course, the movie theater, like I mentioned. And then you guys have some new features too, as I understand. I believe this was the first year that you guys opened up for viewing the recording studio. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, this was the first year that we did that. That was important to us because we were celebrating Thriller 40, and at the same time, I know that I, as someone, would want to see the studio that Michael recorded a lot of his demos and kind of messed around with the Thriller album in terms of figuring out what went where and stuff like that. I would want to see that. I would not want someone to point to a location and be like, oh yeah, it's there, but we can't open the door and let you see it in that way. So there was a lot of work that went into that in terms of getting it prepared in time, because that was a last minute decision.
Oh, really?
That and shout out to Prince for making that happen. He was instrumental in that decision.
Obviously, with this year being the 40th anniversary of Thriller, there was some extra effort put in. Do you think that you've raised the goalpost so high now that each year you're going to have to try and find a way to top that?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, and I said shout out to Prince, but there's a secret mad scientist behind this, Janice Smith, And Janice, every year, she seems to top the earlier party. And so she's kind of the one that keeps is the glue of the party. And so, and I've never underestimated her anyway, but every year just gets bigger and bigger. And so I think what's exciting about next year is we already have some ideas of how to add on to this party. So I would not say that was it and it's going to be, downhill from there. I would actually say there's a lot of exciting things that we figured that we couldn't do this year that we would want to do next year in that way.
Very, very cool. I think you're going to explode all our brains with whatever else you do. I also do want to mention for anyone considering going that you guys also have open what you call the Legacy Room, which is pretty spectacular, which has a lot of Michael Jackson memorabilia in it. And this year, I know there were a bunch of his Grammys. There were several jackets from the Thriller short film. There was the Thriller white suit on display and a bunch of different props and like the masks and things like that from the Ghosts short film as well. And that was so cool to see.
Yeah, it's always exciting to see whether it's costumes, whether it's masks, whether it's awards that you've seen it on TV and now here it is in person in that way. And so the Legacy Room was definitely an exciting room for, I know, the fans to kind of see in person.
Cool. And Charlie, you have to tell us your impressions because I know you've been to this party for a few years and it was so fun to see you there.
Yeah, I've been twice. I would echo everything that you said. It's just an amazing event, a very warm and friendly event. I'm not really a party person. Generally, I just hate parties,
No.
Normally, if anyone was to say, do you want to come to a party? It'd just be a hard no, just under no circumstances. But it's not really like a party, it's like, it's just like a bunch of friends getting together.
Mm-hmm.
And I missed so much of the entertainment. To be honest, the next day, somebody told me that Kathy Sledge from Sister Sledge had performed. I was like, did she?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I missed that completely. I missed Salif. But that's just because the main draw for me is that so many of my friends are there. And living in the UK, it's like it's like having all your friends from America there in one place that you can see them all. It's just amazing. You get to see Taj, you, Elise, and Jarrett. And Konstantinos, shout out to Konstantinos, who also helps to put the party together and do the maze and stuff.
Yeah, he was, when I say instrumental in the maze, he was beyond instrumental. Like if you went through that maze and enjoyed it, that was, I would say 95% Konstantinos is the reason for that.
I think enjoyed is not the word I would use, but I think it did its job.
Well, and Konstantinos, I just also have to give a shout out because he was so busy that night. I hardly got to say hello to him. So hello, Konstantinos, if you're listening. And also, he was dressed as John Landis, and it was about the funniest thing I've ever seen.
And he's fooled Jamon. Because John Landis was not there, but Konstantinos was there as John Landis.
Oh my God. I have been tricked.
You've been duped. Yeah.
Oh, good job, Konstantinos. Wow.
Yeah. It was great, but it was just it was so much fun. So many fans were there, fans from all over the world. I could not believe it. Like people had come from Australia, from the UK, from Germany, from all over the United States. A lot of people that went there for both nights. Some of our fellow podcasters and MJ content creators were there. Jenkins was there, who's really fun to meet. Jenkins, you are so tall. Oh my gosh. And MJ Fangirl was there. I mean, everybody was there, and it was just really fantastic. I got to meet Vernay, who was on one of our previous episodes. She was there both nights. She is an epic fan. So yeah, it was great. It was so exciting. I will absolutely be back. I cannot wait for my little baby daughter to be old enough to bring, and it's going to be a regular part of our lives going forward. So just thank you, Taj, so much to you and everyone who makes it possible, because it is such a special event. I knew it was special, but I didn't quite know how special, and I will never, ever, ever forget it.
Oh, yeah. There's 3 other names, Jennifer, Abel, and Danny. They were also instrumental in the party, and I wouldn't feel right if we got off this topic and I didn't mention them as well.
Well, thanks to all of you so much from the bottom of our hearts. You're doing something so special.
Awesome. That was exciting.
Well, let's go ahead, and I could talk about the Thriller Party for like 6 hours, but
I know I could too. That's why I was like, I was very trying to be short with it because I could literally.
It was so great. But yeah, let's move on to our next topic. So we have a little surprise on social media lately. The one and only John Branca has popped up on TikTok of all places, as well as, of course, that bleeds over into Instagram with a very dynamic channel full of little tidbits of Michael Jackson history and questions about a casino and a museum and, the time that Elvis Presley gave cars to the mafia, which he somehow connects with Michael Jackson. Anyway, it's kind of a wild world out there, which has just started a few weeks ago and has really been causing a buzz among the fan community. Jamon, I know you have some strong feelings about this. Do you want to start on this topic?
Oh, I don't know. Like, it's just came out of nowhere. It really is a strange thing where, for thinking about the first decade after, Michael passing away, and John Branca was kind of this figure that was, to put it mildly, very controversial in the community. Obviously all the questions about the will, obviously all the questions about, the Michael album and the Casio tracks and, his reluctance to be open with fans about those things. And then I guess just out of nowhere, bam, this sort of mysterious figure joins TikTok of all social media platforms, not Twitter, not somewhere where he can sort of, he's a lawyer, right? So you'd think he'd join somewhere where he can put out his thoughts in text form, but he's on TikTok with these incredibly kitschy videos with like beeps and boops all throughout them and little click sounds and like little emoji things coming up everywhere. And it's just an odd, I don't know, just an interesting decision, I would say, that it's almost daily now. He's got a new video out talking about something to do with Michael Jackson. And one of the ones that really kind of got me thinking was sort of this one. He said they're working on a museum, which awesome. That's great. How cool is that? Would love to go to a Michael Jackson themed museum and see artifacts from Michael's life. But then also a casino, with, I'm assuming, Michael Jackson themed slot machines, which are already in Las Vegas. And it just kind of made me think about like, to what extent would Michael want a casino? So yeah, it is, you described it well. It's wild. It's wild to see these videos every day.
I follow John on TikTok. I haven't been on TikTok in a while, but when he joined, I did follow. So I think I saw the first two that he did and stuff like that. And so I don't know what the other posts were and stuff like that. I was just aware that some of them were like just tidbits on Thriller or what Michael had accomplished and stuff like that. So I don't know if I'm the person qualified to talk about the Instagram and stuff like that. Yeah, because I just joined TikTok maybe 7 months ago.
How has your TikTok journey been? Can you tell us about
that?
Well,
I haven't posted since,
okay.
which disappointed many. I put the baby tape on there, which I was super excited about doing. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then I was like, what am I doing on TikTok? Like, I don't even know what to do on TikTok. Like, what do you do? I don't dance, so I'm not going to do the latest trend or anything like that. And I'm kind of secretive with stuff that I'm working on in that way. So it was really hard for me to, I think as my kids get older, I'll do stuff with them and stuff. But at the same time, I didn't know what material to put on there.
Taj, I have a quick question about, by the way, I don't have TikTok and I'm not following anyone on TikTok because I don't use it. But I
just thought you didn't follow me.
No.
Okay. I'm kidding.
I have seen some of the videos because they end up in circulation on Twitter and things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there was one where John Branca said that there was some kind of proposal to turn Havenhurst into a museum, a tourist attraction, which struck me as a strange idea because, of course, Havenhurst is in the middle of a residential street and it does not have a giant parking lot attached to it. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the viability or the feasibility of actually doing that? Would it actually be feasible to turn Havenhurst into a tourist attraction? Because it seems like something that would be very difficult to do.
We've had so many different events there, 300, 400 people. My wedding was there, which was about 200 and something people. And right down the street, there's a park and go or a public parking area that if there was a shuttle that took people to and from, I could see that working. There's also a baseball field right next door that has ample parking. I know the Gelson's next door doesn't allow parking, so that's a no-go. But I don't know. I mean, I think it all depends on what the city agrees. So it's really up to the city. And if the city thinks they can make some money off of it, then they probably will allow it. I don't have an opinion of whether Havenhurst should be turned into a museum, only because it's still like a home to me in that way. I grew up there. And so for me, Havenhurst is just home. I feel like if it's a museum, it's almost like that it'll never be a home again. And it's just wishful thinking. But at the same time, I would love to have a Michael museum or a Jackson museum, something celebrating the family and celebrating all the accomplishments. So, and Havenhurst would be an incredible place for that if that was the case, because it was the Jacksons' home. It was the Jackson Five and LaToya and Janet. And I think Rebe was out before like they were living there. But yeah, I think that would be, I don't know. I have mixed feelings, but I'm not against a museum because I know my uncle wanted a museum at one point for his stuff.
And then another quick question would be, clearly the estate exists to serve its beneficiaries, one of whom is your grandmother. What do you think would be her position on the propriety of a Michael Jackson casino?
A casino in Gary, I think, was the detail he gave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's very interesting because my grandma, I'm going to give you two point of views. I'm going to give you my uncle's point of view, which is I know in the past my uncle thought about casinos and stuff like that and different things way back in the day, obviously. So I would be lying if I said, I'm against a casino because Michael wouldn't want a casino. Now, that never materialized, but it was something in a grand scheme of things. But at the same time, I do know my grandma's highly religious, but I've never heard her against a casino. I mean, she did live in Vegas for a little while, and she has a place in Vegas, and that's casino town or casino country, basically. I mean, even though it's a city. So I don't know. I can't make an assumption in that way. I don't know what a casino would be for the family. I think anything that celebrates the family for me is kind of one of those things that I have like such a low threshold now because I've had to not give up certain things, but just I've had to let certain things go, that anything that's a positive, I kind of champion and I kind of cheerlead on in that way because we've lost so much.
Well, I like your idea, Taj, if anything ever came of this, that it really should actually be a Jackson family museum, not just Michael Jackson. I think that's totally on point.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. And I'm not going to go into a rant or anything like that. And if I do, stop me. But I was on Facebook just recently and one of the Michael Jackson fan clubs or fan pages, it was just, as I was reading, I forgot what they were even talking about. It was borderline on disrespectful to the rest of the brothers.
It was Victory Tour. I saw the post.
Yeah. It was, I'm one of those people and I grew up in that way. My uncle always said, you don't have to minimize someone else to make yourself better. That's why Michael never publicly talked about other artists in terms of, or even though they always edged him on to, because he always believed that you should make yourself better. And I just felt like there's certain people in the community, in the MJ community, and some of them might not even know they're doing this. They feel like in order to make Michael bigger, they have to make other people smaller. And it's not healthy only because it doesn't look right. They were doing it to the brothers. And I can tell you as someone that was around the Victory Tour era a lot, that a lot of Michael's greatest times are around that Victory Tour era and his happiest times. And to make it equated to he was just doing it for his brothers because his brothers needed money is such a sin. and it's a narrative that I'm hearing over and over. Yes, he could have toured on his own, of course, but at the same time, there's something exciting about touring with his brothers again, and all his brothers again, even though that's not what happened. But there was that excitement too, and his mom wanted that to happen as well.
Yeah, on the Victory Tour specifically, it'll be interesting to see what narrative is put forward in the upcoming CNN documentary on that tour.
Oh, there's this documentary.
Yeah. It's about to come out. I think it's just weeks away. J. Randy Trabarelli revealed that he was interviewed.
Oh, okay. I've seen a little pieces of that, or I've seen him post about that. Yeah, because one of the things, and we'll get into other stuff, I'm sure later, but what I'm always worried about is who controls the narrative and what picture do they paint in the narrative, because this narrative of the brothers being broke and needing money, and Michael doing the Victory Tour as a charitable act to them, is not a fair trait and not a fair, I guess, story to tell in that way. And it's a story that some of the fans have run. And yes, Michael did donate all his money to charity because he was very upset at the cost of the tickets. They were high at that point, which now looking back at it, like knowing other artists and how much they charge, $30 was a lot back then. I think that would be the equivalent of $100 today. But now you see tickets for $200, $300, $1,000 and whatever going for artists. And so it's not as ridiculous, but I guess the Jacksons, because they were one of the first to do it, it was bad publicity.
I was just going to say, it's not just the fans. It's I think there's probably a reason that we're seeing an uptick in fan discussion about the Victory Tour and supposedly Michael being forced into it and hating it, because that's a narrative that's being pushed by the estate on two fronts right now. Firstly, in the Broadway musical, it's quite a central element of the plot to the Broadway musical, and also in their Thriller 40 documentary, which we may discuss at some point later.
Yeah, and I think that's I always go off of what my brain and my memories tell me, and just how my uncle was and what we talked about in that way. And we've asked him plenty of times. We asked him about the Victory Tour, and even just me growing up and being around during that time period, it goes against everything that I witnessed and experienced. And it's those narratives. It's a narrative that, like, Michael didn't like touring with his brothers, which is also something that bothered me, or that he would never have toured with his brothers again or never wanted to work with his brothers again, which now we know is not true because we've found out facts about that. But I think that's the problem with these narratives, is sometimes people run with them because that's all they had at the time, and they didn't have the inside source saying it. And yes, he had Thriller, and it was the biggest album, and he could have easily done a solo tour and it would have done equally probably as good. But there was something magical about that Victory Tour and with his brothers that can't be duplicated.
Do you think there's an element of tactical marketing, shall we say, with that whole narrative around the time, saying, oh, this will be the last time that Michael performs with the brothers, to try and drive up ticket sales? Or
Oh, well, of course. I mean, they did the same thing with Motown 25, and every time, and then the 30th anniversary, it's like, this is the last time we're going to see Michael with his brothers. And I think that always makes it exciting in terms of they're reuniting one last time. And it would be the same thing with Destiny's Child. Every time you see Beyonce, and whether it's Kelly or Michelle joining the group, it's like, it's something unique about it.
Very interesting.
The thing for me is the Victory Tour. Like, if you take that time period of my life, it's one of the most joyful periods. That probably 5-year span is one of the highlights of my life. And so I remember things vividly. And it was also, I just remember how happy my uncle was during that Thriller era, during the Victory Tour era in general. And it's weird because I can understand two things with my uncle. One thing being, and both things can exist, when you're in a group, and especially if the group has family and all that stuff, and you don't have a family yet, and you want to move one way and they have to move another way, because they're a lot slower. They have to think about their families, and you're thinking about how much bigger can I get and how many more things can I do? And you feel like this train is moving slower because you have to get 6 people's opinion five people's opinion as opposed to just one opinion. Then yeah, like it does slow you down. And I understand that. But at the same time, I know my uncle loved performing with his brothers and he loved seeing them on stage with him. And there's something of a protectiveness in that can't be duplicated with other people. And so that's also kind of goes through my head too. Yes, the solo tours and whatever, he was able to reach heights that he's never reached before because he literally was free to make his own decisions and not have to vote by committee, I would say, or which I've been very used to with my brothers in that way with 3T and stuff like that. So it is easier when you're voting on when you can make your own decisions. But at the same time, there is that comfort of being there on stage with your brothers and being protected by your family. And also knowing that you're not alone and because touring life can be very lonely.
Do you think that possibly the narrative of that's put out there about Michael not wanting to tour with the brothers is perhaps accented by things that he said and did, such as this is our last and final show at the last show of the Victory Tour, and hinting that he may not perform with his brothers again?
Yeah, I do think that. I do think that, you know, you do want to hype up the tour and you want to hype up that like this is what you're about to see might not ever happen again. But at the same time, that's part of being a salesman. And a lot of artists do that. They say, this is my farewell tour, or this, you know, I'm not going to be, this is it. Was like that. This is it. And part of me for even with this is it, when he was saying that about his tour, part of me was like, I wouldn't have never accepted that he would never be on stage again in concert. I always thought, okay, give it 5-10 years, he'll be back on stage again with another tour, because it's one of those things, especially if you've done it your whole life, there's no other feeling like that to reach the fans and perform on stage. And it's something that you can't explain unless you're up there and you see it. And so I definitely think that there was that magic with the brothers. And of course, at the same time, he loved performing with his brothers, but there is the brotherhood thing and the voting and everything else that goes with that.
I think you're right with what you're saying about plenty of artists are out there doing multiple farewell tours. There's a running joke here in Australia that John Farnham does his comeback every year, and even Elton John at the moment is doing his 250th one.
I was gonna say Elton. Yeah, I know Elton John's he's notorious for that. And look, you know, at that time maybe they really believe it in that way, that this is the last time I'll be on stage or whatever. And
it's interesting you brought up This Is It as well, because that's the only time I ever saw your uncle in person was at the announcement at the O2 in London for the This Is It tour. And the thing that piqued my interest wasn't what he said, it was what he didn't say. And what he said was, these will be my final show performances in London. And I thought to myself, okay, so where else are you going with this?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was, implied.
Taj, I just hope that with this upcoming Victory Tour documentary on CNN that some of your family members will be interviewed if they haven't been already, because, I mean, how do you make a Victory Tour documentary without talking to the brothers? And I think we'll talk about this a little later in the episode, I guess, when we get to talking about the new Thriller 40 documentary. But I think that's one of the bigger criticisms around that as well. You're dealing with a time period and a tour where there's some voices excluded that were central to that.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of understanding that and knowing, you know, the Jackson 5 were not just backup dancers and artists for Michael Jackson in that way. They were a group, they were a unit. And I think that's more come from just I didn't even want to say younger generation. I just think there's a certain faction that basically believes that the brothers existed just to back up Michael Jackson.
Well, I hope that in the long run, history, fan communities, and the general public can start to get a better sense of the full picture. And I mean, thank you, Taj, too, for all your comments on this. I think they're really important, and your perspective is invaluable. I can say from seeing your father at solo shows that he was certainly not just there supporting your uncle. He is so amazing on his own, and all your uncles are so incredible too.
I take a lot of pride in my uncles, and as much as I hype up my Uncle Michael, and he doesn't need hype, but I'm so proud of all the accomplishments that he's done that will never be matched. I do feel like there's this big shadow on the rest of the family, and they don't get the credit that they deserve. They don't, as a sensation as Michael was at 11 years old singing on the Ed Sullivan Show, there was Jermaine, playing bass at 14 and my dad playing guitar at 15. And that's just at the Ed Sullivan Show. They were playing live those performances. And, it's like I listen to those, I watch those shows, and I'm like so amazed at the talent. And it took a family of talent. It just wasn't Michael singing by himself. It was the whole package that got them from Gary, Indiana to LA, and hitting big.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And then speaking of hype, I do want to circle back to John Branca's TikTok just for a moment, because we got off on a very, very interesting and valuable side conversation. But I do just want to make one point personally about how I feel about what John Branca is doing before we totally leave that topic. And, I feel like, and I think the whole fan community feels like, the Michael Jackson estate obviously has not done the internet well, right? Their Twitter account is notoriously bad. There are all these accounts that make fun of their posts. They do not do a good job, right? So they're trying to come in and finally do something. And it maybe is the right move. I think it taps into obviously what TikTok does well. I think it taps into what some other content creators like The Detail is doing well. There are some interesting tidbits here. We get to see some memorabilia, but what baffles me is how it's being turned into, well, I guess it doesn't baffle me because this is always how it's been. John Branca taking credit for everything Michael Jackson ever did. And that is the whole focus of this TikTok account, which I find really bizarre. So that's a little disappointing. I hope it will evolve into a place that maybe it is a little more useful, but right now I find it rather mystifying. Don't know if you guys agree with that or...
Yeah, I agree with it. I really agree with that, Elise. I think there is a purpose that can be served from it, and that can be seen with the one video he did around ABC, the network channel, canceling the Chris Brown tribute performance at the American Music Awards, AMAs?
Yes.
Where he directly called that out and said, ABC made the wrong decision here, etc. And I think that was very direct. It spread really well. It was clear. It was to the point. And I think that purpose is a great one. All of the other videos you're mentioning around, Michael did this thing one time, but it was actually me behind the scenes making it all possible because I'm a genius. Like they're the ones that are a bit distasteful, I think.
Well, there's also just a general wider problem of the MJ social media accounts not making use of their own asset. So Damien Shields texts me quite regularly, sort of frothing at the mouth and saying, have you seen this latest thing that the estate has tweeted? And it'll be like a video of a 7-year-old fan doing, an admirable attempt at doing some kind of Michael Jackson dance routine for a 7-year-old. But it's like, when was the last time they posted a video of Michael doing something? You're the Michael Jackson estate. There exist thousands and thousands of hours of footage of Michael Jackson doing amazing stuff. They never post any of it. They never share any of it. The whole social media presence seems to be about directing attention away from Michael Jackson. And we've spoken about it on the show before, but it's almost like there is this concerted attempt to separate Michael Jackson, the concept, from Michael Jackson, the man, possibly because they feel that he is in some way tainted or difficult to market. And so all of their effort seems to go into promoting proxy Michael Jackson. So it's the Cirque du Soleil show, it's the Broadway musical thing, It's a cartoon of Thriller. It's CDs that don't even have Michael's face on, that kind of stuff, you know? Mm-hmm. So that it does just seem to be part of this much bigger years-long situation where the estate tends to point in a direction anywhere other than at Michael Jackson.
Yeah, and never has that been clearer than this year with Thriller 40, when the estate have failed to market their beautiful 4K remasters of Beat It and Thriller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been listening to you guys, and I have an interesting take as I was listening, because I do follow the accounts of the Michael Jackson on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And it just popped in my head just now. What if, and this is just a what if, because it would make sense to me. I feel like, and me being a fan of my uncle as well, I know what I would want to see. But what if they weren't going after or servicing the fans that were already here, but going after the people that weren't fans and trying to get new fans, and that was their focus? And I'm not saying that's the right strategy, but what if they were doing it that way, as opposed to, it's like, oh, we already have the people here, let's try and get more outside of that bubble in that way. And you run the risk of obviously alienating the people that actually got you there and the people that are the biggest supporters. But that would kind of, like, now as you guys were talking, that would make more sense, because like no one asked for the cartoon or no one asked for this, but maybe they're going after different demographics. Maybe they're trying to get, X amount of fans from this demographic or this or that. Hey, anime is big. Let's do an anime. And so that would make sense to me if they were trying to do it that way. I'm not saying that's the right way to do it. I'm just saying that that's the only way I can wrap my head around certain strategies in that. And so the Thriller 40th 4K, that is something the fans have been dying to see, but it's not something that the general public it's not even on their radar. So that's why I was like, maybe that might be one of the disconnects in that.
I think there might be something in that for sure. And unfortunately, the numbers probably support that in terms of their sales, because the projects that they've tried to do, which have been the most respectful to Michael and his direct artistic legacy, let's take Bad 25, for example. Let's just ignore the a couple of remixes on that. But, that's a package which is, I guess, pointed to by fans as probably being the most comprehensive effort they've done to honoring a certain album or era, where you've got a lot of outtakes, you've got a concert release, you've got a great documentary by Spike Lee, all of those things in one package. And famously, it did not sell very well at all. Yet you compare that to things like the Cirque shows, which have very little to do with Michael except his music, and they have been astronomical successes. So I think you're probably right. It's probably the estate team looking at the numbers and going, well, when we do things that market to not the core fan base or outside the core fan base, they actually do really well. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, probably.
Well, I look at it because I'm looking at it as a movie goer, and I famously love the Transformers, and the Transformers that I got before in terms of movie wise, I didn't think was faithful to the brand, and I was very vocal about that. But then I got my Bumblebee movie, which I loved, and anyone that was like a diehard Transformer Generation 1 loved that movie, and it got a lot of praise, but unfortunately didn't make as much money as the Michael Bay's did. And so it's kind of one of those things, is, as you said, it's like the numbers are what people go off of, not the excitement of the fans and stuff like that. I was kind of throwing a wrench into that thing, just because I always try and see things from both sides. Now, I'm someone that always thinks you should always service the people that got you there, and the people. You run the risk of losing the fan base when you go after other fan bases and don't make your fan base the priority. But I'm also not a numbers person, and that way I'm more of a heart and feel person.
I actually do think things like restoring the videos actually hits kind of the middle ground between these two places, because I know there was an earlier comment that maybe the new fans don't necessarily care, but I think, Thriller, for example, Thriller, like most iconic music video ever in the history of music, was in pretty terrible quality on like
Yeah.
YouTube before that, right? And so when you think about, even if it's mostly the fans who care about it being restored and notice the details of what that restoration really means, I still actually think doing things like that is essential to catching the eye of the next generation,
Yes.
so that when it pops up on their feed, they're like, oh, what is this? And it actually looks good instead of the super dark, you could barely see it, crumbly vision that it was before. So I think this kind of thing, the restorations, can become really, really important for both existing fans and that potential next generation of consumers and fans.
Exactly. I think what I was saying was the timing. Like we wanted we wanted it right at Thriller 40th, and for them, it's like, hey, when we get it, we get it in that way.
I agree.
But yeah, in terms of restoration, especially since that video is in the Library of Congress, it should have been up-res. It should look pristine in that way, because that's the music video that everyone's going to compare other music videos to. So you're right. It needed to be fixed. And since Michael Jackson is known for his incredible music videos, those videos should be in 4K at least. And
I think I want to echo a little bit what you said. And this is something that we spoke about in a Thriller 40 episode, which if you're listening to this in the future, make sure you go out and check out, because it's a good discussion. Thriller being in 4K and Beat It in 4K, and I understand that Billie Jean is on the way as well in 4K, is the best way to get up-to-date fans interested, because if you see something that's of lower quality, you're more likely to skip. And, we had this discussion on that episode as well about the things that were included on Thriller 40 and how positive it was that those short films and videos were made in 4K and how great they look as a result. But then other decisions such as adding the 2008 versions by Kanye West and Fergie of different songs, if you're trying to capture a new audience, then, nothing says up to date like a 15-year-old version of a 40-year-old song, So I sort of understand sometimes the tactics that they're taking. And just touching on John Branca again, I think a lot of people forget that he is essentially pro Michael Jackson. And it's in his interest to be pro Michael Jackson because it serves his own interest, probably financially as well, but that's not my business. So he's not going to go out there and destroy Michael's legacy. But at the same time, you're sort of looking at some of the things that he's doing and you go, what? Like this whole social media presence that he's got. Hey, look how great I am for making the greatest artist of all time into what he was.
Bit of a side question here, Taj, but I'm actually interested in the other co-executor, John McClane. We've heard nothing from him in 10 years, yet from what we understand, he had some involvement with Michael, in the late 80s and maybe early 90s, and even produced some of the songs that have come out posthumously. And in my opinion, the songs that he's produced himself, like This Is It, Love Never Felt So Good, Behind the Mask, they're some of the most tasteful and best productions that we've seen posthumously. Have you had much to do with John McClane personally?
You mean recently or just in the past?
Oh, just in general in the past. Like, have you had much to do with him? What's he like as a person? We know so little about him.
I haven't seen John in a while, and there's a lot of history with John and 3T. During the time period of our second album that never got released, John McClane was trying to get our second album on DreamWorks. There's going to be a DreamWorks music label. And so we had a lot of dealings with John in that way of trying to get our album off of Sony and onto DreamWorks. John was always, from what I've known in the past, and I'm going off of experience of what my dad's told me, John was a childhood friend, my dad and him, and I think, I want to say Jermaine, but I'm not sure. They were the school photographers / journalists in terms of they're responsible for the yearbook pictures and stuff. So there's a lot of history with John McClane with the family. I unfortunately haven't seen or heard John in a while. I do know that he is someone that the artistic aspect, as you mentioned with the songs, always piques his interest, and that's his wheelhouse. And so you see his names on certain things that are artistically like creative in that way. But I did meet with him at one point when I met with John Branca for the executor thing. And so, but he's not been anything but nice to me and friendly to me. So I have nothing, to say in a negative thing about John McClane at all. I don't have enough experience to say any more because I haven't heard from him in a while.
I just very interested by him. I'd love to speak with him one day. Actually, I'd love to interview him.
Yeah, he's been very behind the scenes, and I don't even know, what the last time I probably talked to him was a good, I would say 10 years ago. So it's been a while for me as well.
Yeah. So continuing on the topic of estate projects, I wanted to bring up a new interview with Lynn Nottage. Now, of course, fans will know that she is the playwright of the MJ musical, which, here at the MJCast, we've kind of had a conflicted relationship with. It's taken us a long time to fully get on board, I will admit, with the Broadway show. But it's been fantastic to see that it's won a ton of awards. Everyone I know, I have not personally seen it. We're going to hear from Charlie in a minute who has seen it. Everyone I know who's seen it has only good things to say about it. But there is this little seed of uncertainty that has kind of rooted with us and stayed with us since the initial announcements about this show. And that is with Lynn Nottage herself and how she really feels about Michael Jackson. Does she think he was guilty of the things he was charged? She has never made any sort of clear statement in support of him, but has made several rather troubling statements about potentially believing certain people who will go unnamed. And so this new interview has come out in the LA Times where, again, she really comes across as being very much on the fence. She says she is a huge Michael Jackson fan. His music was the soundtrack of her life, but then goes back into this kind of wishy-washy, not supporting him in the way that we would want someone who is so deeply involved in what's become such an important project to support him. So, Jamon, I know that you had some notes in our shared notes for this topic. Would you like to start off here?
Oh, I just had a quote from the article where she says, one of the things that you can't dismiss is that we all have a relationship with Michael Jackson if you're a certain age, and we haven't all had the space or opportunity to process how we feel. That is why we created a piece of art in which people, regardless of what you believe, can come in and have a journey, whether that journey is to move deeper into your love or whether your journey is to release some of those emotions. We just wanted to create that space. And there's some other quotes in the interview as well where she does pointedly sort of suggest that he may have been guilty. And I don't know, I just don't understand why. And we will talk later about the Thriller 40 documentary too and who directed that, Nelson George, and some of the statements that Nelson's made about Michael over the years. But I just get deeply concerned as to why the Michael Jackson estate continues to partner with creative entities that publicly question Michael's innocence.
Yeah, I would be lying if I said that I don't see these things, and when the Broadway play, when it was announced and then we found out who was writing it, it was a very big concern for me, and in that way, because I don't want someone to profit or someone to get success off of thinking my uncle was guilty of something and still benefit. There's plenty of people that know of his innocence that should be benefiting from that. And so it is kind of conflicting for me because I've heard such incredible, and I haven't seen the Broadway play either, but I've heard such incredible things about it. And I know what it is doing for the public in that way. I just was on Twitter right before I came on here, and Kelly Rowland was basically saying it. You have to go see the Broadway play, if you haven't seen it already. And there's been tons and tons of people that have said that. So there's a bunch of people that are reuniting with Michael in that way through this Broadway play. It I shouldn't say irks me, but it's sad that someone that benefits from that is the writer who is still on the fence, which in itself is inexcusable to me. I mean, go do your research and homework. Don't, especially if you're a writer, you should not be on the fence of anything. The facts are out there. And if she's over there researching Michael's life, she should be researching the truth. And so that in itself bothers me. You could have been on the fence when in 2019, just because of just gut reaction, and here, put a mic in front of someone's face and ask what their feeling is. But we're 3 years past that, and that those excuses are gone in that way. And you've had 3 years to discover the truth, learn the truth, or research the truth. So, and if that still hasn't been done, that's a choice at that point to me.
I do have to believe that everyone concerned with this production was told, like maybe actually by the estate, not to even comment on this particular issue, because I have noticed that interviews with like everyone, the I'm forgetting his name, the guy who was originally supposed to be Miles Frost, like any interviews I have seen, I have noticed that they do not comment on this particular issue. And maybe that was in order just to try to keep it away from this and allow for that just mainstream engagement and not make it this controversial, thing. But I think Lynn Nottage in particular has gone over too far on that other side where she's not just not commenting on it, but she's actually made problematic statements. And yeah, I agree. It's just mystifying and troubling. And she's such a great playwright. I was a fan of hers before I'd seen plays she did, before this and before I ever heard her make statements about this. So now I'm not as much of a fan. And clearly she did a great job. But yeah, it's hard to get away from this. I don't know.
Yeah, I just think it's about time that, it's been 3 years, going on 4 years. People need to be educated in that way, and there's no excuse. So I don't stand by, I do stand by what I said in terms of, I think it's a choice at that point because the information's been out there. And it's very accessible, especially if you're in the Michael universe like she is. This is what I would expect her to say. Hey, look, when I did an interview before, I didn't know all the facts, but, I've been doing, I did some research for this play and I've done a lot of research since. And now I know he's innocent. And so, and I expect everyone else to do the same and enjoy the play because he's innocent.
I think there's almost an element of it being like, it's a trap, isn't it? The media is setting a trap for her because in the post Me Too age, whatever she says is wrong. If she says that she believes the accusers, then she gets the Michael fans going bananas, and that's her audience essentially for her musical. So she's sabotaging her own musical. And if she says, I don't believe the accusers, then of course there will be a tiki torch wielding online lynch mob ready to demand the cancellation of her entire career and send letters to every theatre that's staging one of her productions and say, how can you stage a production by this victim blaming fascist, so it's a climate at the moment where it's just lethal. It's lethal. It's like whatever direction you step in is a landmine. And so she seems to be doing
the tight roping.
Yeah, exactly. Walking up. Yeah. But that clearly that initial interview that she gave in 2019, she was suggesting she was on the side of the accusers. And I've never heard her say that she was misquoted or anything like that. I've never heard her say that journalist made that quote up. I never said that. I've never heard her retract it.
And that is why I was so hard on her in general, because of that initial. If she was always tight roping and always kind of like, I don't really want to comment and, this, and I'm just leaving, then it would be one thing. But since she felt the need to speak freely the first time and give her opinion, she needs to correct that now. Otherwise, the tight roping doesn't work for me anymore in that way, because she's already made her opinion known.
And not just her either. You got people like Barbara Streisand and Louis Theroux who've said similar things, and you're just like, come on, guys, the facts are out there for you to actually look this up. It's just that your, I suppose, laziness to commenting on a topic that you don't know about is always dangerous.
Well, it's also Charles brought up a good point, though. It's also their career in that way, and it's character. Like some people will say, you know what? I don't care. I did my research. I did my homework, and this is what I know. And then others will be like, hey, I want a paycheck at the end of the month. And so I'm going to side with the side that is paying my bills. And so I've seen that a lot in the Hollywood, not as much in the music scene, because I think in the music scene, people are their own bosses. So they've been able to speak more freely. But if you're tied to Hollywood in any way, or that Hollywood crowd, you've been very much on the side of like, I have to lean. I can teeter, but I have to lean on the side of, well, we don't know, kind of. That's like their safe answer. We don't know what happened, as opposed to being like, no, this didn't happen, and they're lying in that way. And so that's why I do respect the certain people that have been out front and said, no, this is a lie, and you're not going to make me say any differently.
I was speaking to a very successful musician a while ago who's in a very successful band. And they were saying that their bandmates had pleaded with them, literally pleaded with them, don't put anything online defending Michael. Please don't do it. Please don't do it, because you'll kill all of our careers. You'll destroy all of us. So there's pressure. There is even within the music industry, there's pressure from people.
Of course, yeah. But and maybe that's just me. What makes someone's character is when there is that pressure. What do? I sat there and watched my uncle in 2005 be abandoned by people. And because their agents, because their managers told them to stay away. And the only people I have respect for are the people that said, no, I'm not going to do this. This person needs me, because that's the easiest thing to do, is stay away. But that's also the most harmful thing to do to someone, especially if you're their friend in that way. I'm not saying those bandmates were Michael's friends or not, but this is, if you don't stand up for stuff, especially when it's right, then it's like everyone will be silenced at one point or the other, because it becomes a mob of like, and people are sheep in terms of like, hey, I don't want to go against the mob, so I'm just going to be quiet. It forced me to go against the mob, and I'm one of the most quiet people, but I also hate injustice, and I was going to take the arrows standing up straight, and I did, because I was like, they're not going to do this to my uncle again. I already saw people hide in the caves and then come out after he passed and celebrate him like nothing was wrong in that way, and they weren't running during the trial. And I've kept those names secret, but I know those names. I know the people that I see now on social media praising Michael and all that stuff after they abandoned him. So it's just hard in general to see that stuff as a family member and know all the history behind it.
Taj, does all of this with Lynn Nottage make you not want to see the show at all, or are you planning to see it?
Oh, no, I would never not see a show just because of one person. What's made me not want to see the show is just I'm lazy and haven't gotten to New York. That's generally it in that way. I don't like to travel at all in that way. And if I travel, I need it to be for work related in that. And so that is it. That's the only reason I haven't seen it. If it was in LA, I would have seen it. If it was in Vegas, I would have seen it, because those are places that I go to a lot and frequently. So it has nothing to do with Lynn at all. And so, yeah, that's literally the only reason that I haven't seen it as of yet.
Well, it supposedly is going to start touring through North America, I think in mid-2023 or something, but I haven't seen dates, so I can't imagine it'll actually happen quite that soon, but we'll see.
And yeah, and I met Miles Frost during the Halloween nights, and he was amazing. He's an amazing person. I haven't even seen him perform, and he had something about him that was very unique and special. So I'm excited to support that and support him.
Yeah, and he seems like a great guy. I'm so glad that he's the one who ended up in the show. After all, he's just seems phenomenal. Everything I read about him and see about him, he seems to really carry Michael's spirit in him. So that's fantastic. And then, on the more positive side too, we were just talking a little bit ago about how do you hit that middle ground of the longtime fans and really get, that catch the eye of those non-fans or the next generation of fans. And I do think think that this show is absolutely a home run in terms of hitting that sweet spot. Everyone I hear who's seen it says that it's absolutely not just fans who are in attendance, that it's a lot of people just kind of off the street who are, really, really loving it too. So I think the estate's figured out the right strategy here. And I think that's a good thing for sure. And then speaking of that, actually, for someone who's actually seen it, Charlie Thomson has seen it in New York. Charlie, can you tell us a little bit about your experience and thoughts on the show?
Yeah, of course. I mean, overwhelmingly it was positive, although I do have some reservations about it. So I saw it twice in New York. I went to an evening show and then a matinee show. Saw Miles Frost in the evening, and I think the understudy's name is Aramie Payton. I saw the following day in the matinee. And it was interesting because they each brought different qualities to the role. Miles, in my opinion, was the better singer and dancer, but the other guy, Aramie, played Michael better, I felt. So basically the plot line is that they're in the studio rehearsing for the Dangerous Tour, and there is a financial problem going on, which is that the business people involved in the tour are telling Michael that the show is spiraling out of control and it's becoming incredibly expensive, and that if he insists on staging the show in the way that he is proposing to, then the tour is at massive risk of losing money instead of making money. And so Michael is having this crisis where he's having to deliberate over whether he should use Neverland. He should sign a contract which offers up Neverland as collateral if the tour loses money. Essentially, that's the backbone of the musical. And then it kind of continually flashes backwards and forwards in time to try to draw a line between Michael's obsession as an adult with his show being the best and the most perfect thing that's ever happened, and his childhood and how it was drilled into him as a child that everything had to be perfect. And so that, of course, sets up Joe Jackson as the foil. So Joe is portrayed as this kind of overbearing monster who beats the kids and tells them, if you don't do everything perfect, then I'm going to keep beating you. And that Michael is essentially wounded, traumatized, scarred as a child, and left sort of emotionally crippled and obsessed for the rest of his life with making everything perfect all the time. That's the backbone of the show, essentially. And so you keep flicking between the present day, the studio in 92, putting together the Dangerous Tour, and the past events. And the device that they use to keep switching between these two is that they have this lady and her cameraman in there who are supposedly from MTV that are interviewing Michael about his life. And so he's telling them the stories, and that's the device by which the play keeps going into flashback. And overwhelmingly, I did think it was very effective, albeit I'm pretty sure that the central plot line is not true. I've never heard of Michael putting Neverland up as collateral against the Dangerous Tour. I went into it expecting it to be a very happy, clappy, kind of almost like a jukebox musical. I wasn't expecting much of it, to be honest. I thought it would be a bit superficial. But actually, it was surprisingly dark, surprisingly gritty. It did not shy away from exploring, the troubles that Michael had, and in fact put them front and center. And essentially, they were the focus of the entire show. Because of course, when the London run was announced a while ago, the first thing that happened was some ninny wrote a think piece for one of the UK papers saying, "What's the point of a Michael Jackson stage show that ignores all of his demons," or something like that. Of course, they've never seen it. If they had seen it, they would have known that that's not true. However, I do have some reservations about it. The first is that it's not entirely accurate. There are things that are happening that never happened, or that are happening in the wrong time. And as is often the case with things that are officially sanctioned by Michael's estate, there is certainly an element of the plot which amounts to an attack on the Jackson family. So Joe Jackson, of course, Michael criticized Joe himself for his heavy-handed parenting and so on, but part of the thread of the show, sorry for all the spoilers, by the way, but part of the thread of the show is that Michael is obsessed by the idea that the Victory Tour was a pile of shit, and he can't. The Dangerous Tour must not, under any circumstances, be allowed to be as terrible as the Victory Tour was. And so what they do is they have this moment in the show where Michael's hair catches fire, and then he's in the hospital having been burned, and you're in the corridor of the hospital, and Joe Jackson is having a conversation with the doctor and says words to the effect of, "I don't care what you have to pump him with, just give him whatever he needs to get him on stage for the Victory Tour." So essentially they wind up blaming Joe Jackson for Michael's drug dependency. And in the musical, Michael is dependent on drugs in 1992 in the rehearsal studio for Dangerous, which of course is not true. So they keep showing him taking pills. And that's all laid at Joe Jackson's feet. That's all Joe's fault. And then the other thing is that there's actually a scene in the Victory Tour rehearsals where Michael is having to keep taking pills because he's in so much pain. And there's actually some dialogue between him and the brothers where they're all essentially saying, "Oh, I don't know why you put so much effort into the shows. You should just phone it in like we all do." So there is a whole element of the show which just amounts to an attack on the Jackson family, which I was not comfortable with. However, if you put that to one side, which of course, if you were Taj, for example, that might be very difficult to put to one side because it's essentially an attack on your own father. But if you were to remove that element from the show, then the rest of it is actually very good. It's just kind of marred by that somewhat unnecessary subplot, which is actually completely fictitious. On the plus side, Miles Frost, amazing, extremely good singer, extremely good dancer. In fact, there's one scene towards the very end of the show. He's kind of, spoiler alert, but he's kind of being like thrown around like a marionette puppet by a big demonic Joe Jackson. And he was kind of like being flung across the stage and then springing back up to his feet. It was amazing. I just don't know how he did it. It looked like he was on wires, but he wasn't. He's exceptionally talented. The audience, not a fan audience. It was very much a general theatre goer audience. People loved it. Standing ovation both times that I went. And it's going down very well with audiences, and a packed house both times as well. I'd say it's worth going to see as a fan. But there are things in it that are probably going to aggravate you as a fan, which if you weren't a fan, if you were just a general member of the public, would probably wash over you and wouldn't be too much of an issue. It's only for people like us that know the ins and outs of Michael's life that these things become aggravating. So yeah, that's my kind of pot review.
Interesting.
Thank you, Charlie. That's amazing. Very well articulated. I haven't seen it, and I guess I would like to one day, but something that's always concerned me were those early reviews that we got sent at the MJCast, where fans who had gone to see it, and we spoke about this last year, I think, on last year's Christmas episode.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But some of those early reviews from the fans talked about things like Michael's own art, his own songs being repurposed to make statements that they weren't intended to. Like, for example, I think an example that was given was that there was a scene where Joe Jackson was like beating Michael with a belt or something to the song Money from the History album, which obviously has nothing to do with that.
That's if that was in the show, it's been removed. Okay. It wasn't in the show when I saw it. However, there is a scene where the family are all harassing Michael to do the Victory Tour. Michael says, "Why would I want to do that when I've got the #1 album in the world and I could go on tour for that?" And then Joe starts singing not Michael's song Money, but the song Money, 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 Money. I don't know who sings that, but anyway, so Joe just starts singing that song, and then it kind of morphs into Michael's Money, I think. So Money is in there, and it's still used in a negative context about the family, but there's not a scene where Michael is being beaten. And it sounds like the scenes where Michael was being beaten have been watered down, because compared to the early reviews that we received, what was included in the show when I went both times was actually very tame. Very, very tame. A single scene where Joe kind of pushes Michael over, sort of shoves him, and he falls over. That was about it. So it does sound like that aspect of the show has been altered since it first opened.
Which is not unusual, is it, for plays to evolve over time?
No, particularly if it opened in previews, because I think it was open in previews for about a month before the official opening night, so that's not unusual. And it may have been due to a request. I don't know. I don't know who went. Who went to Taj? Did Prince went, didn't he?
I think it was a mixture of just different family members seeing it and requesting changes in there due to accuracy or due to tone. I know the brothers went as well, and that was one of the things that they had a concern with.
I would suggest that maybe everything that they weren't happy with has not been removed because...
Oh, I'm sure not. Yeah.
So some of that stuff in there is very bad about, like essentially the scene. I was quite shocked by the scene where they were all in the victory rehearsals and they were basically saying, oh, you're an idiot for putting so much effort into the shows. You should just phone it in like we do. I don't think they use the phrase phone it in, but it's words to that effect. I don't know why you bother putting so much effort in. Yeah. We don't. Something like that.
Which is for me, like if you see the footage of the victory tour, they definitely didn't do that. Like that's what's so crazy about like it's words versus your own eyes, but most people haven't seen the victory tour or footage of it since. But I can tell you just the footage that I've seen, and I'm not saying the footage from like I'm privy to any footage, but just online footage that I've seen, like you freaking see Marlon sweating the storm as he's dancing. You see my dad, they're all there doing what they needed to do. And I don't think any of them ever phoned in any performance.
No.
Ever.
And there's a line in the show where Michael says, I can't ever let my fans down again the way that I did with the Victory Tour.
That's
something
ridiculous.
Like that.
Yeah.
Whereas, as we all know, the Victory Tour was it was one of the biggest, most successful and most critically acclaimed tours in history. I think it still owns a record in America for the most number of consecutive shows in a stadium.
Yeah. Well, I think what the problem with the Victory Tour, from what I remember, was that because the tickets were $30, like right when it was announced and whatever, the local news channels would go around poor neighborhoods and they would interview these families that were lifelong Jackson fans, and they would be on TV crying how they cannot go to this Victory Tour because it's too expensive. Like, how am I supposed to, get my family to this concert? I have 4 people and that's $120. And I'm not saying at that time there probably was concern, but I'm just saying that that's what the negative news was going around doing, was interviewing these people. So I know that my uncle was one of those people like, well, I'm not doing it for the money, so I'm going to donate it all because I don't want that narrative on me. But at the same time, the Victory Tour was a concert like no other concert, where cost-wise, it was an expensive concert, and the lighting and the theatrics. Anyone that saw the concert knew why it was expensive. But you got to remember back then, there were other artists that weren't doing nearly half of that and putting on half a show like that. They would just be there with their instrument and performing to a piano or to a guitar. So what the Jacksons and the family brought was an experience. And it's hard when you're the first person or the first family to do that, to say, hey, this is going to be worth it. Trust us. Here's the experience you're going to get. But at the same time, that negative press was one of the deciding factors. So when you say, like, I don't want it to be a disaster like the Victory Tour was, I think it was the whole Don King fiasco of the tickets being too expensive and bad promotion on certain things in that way. That was kind of the business side of the Victory Tour, I think, or the business dealings on that side was probably the fiasco. I can tell you the performance aspect and the family aspect was never the fiasco.
Yeah, which is not the narrative in the musical.
Yeah.
In the musical,
of course,
he's basically saying, this show has to be amazing because the Victory Tour was so terrible and I can't do it to my fans again, which is, as Jamon said, is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I think if or when the Victory Tour concert comes out, if there is one that can come out, I think people will understand that that's not the truth of it.
And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that shortly when we discuss the Thriller 40 documentary, which Charlie, you've also seen, both Charlies have seen. I just want to make that note, though, also on the musical, that if there is in fact no redemption story for Joe Jackson in the musical, that in itself has just turned me off to wanting to see anything to do with it, because it's so historically inaccurate. Michael Jackson, at his Oxford speech, in the early 2000s, talked about forgiving his father. Who was there at the trial holding his son's hand as they walked into the courtroom? Joe Jackson. Jermaine Jackson talks about in his book, he quotes Michael on stage at This Is It rehearsals saying, if Joe Jackson was here, this wouldn't be happening. There was forgiveness and redemption, and that bothers me that story, that's not included in the play.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people, I mean, you did your homework and a lot of the fans have, but a lot of the public isn't privy to that redemption story, isn't privy to how my uncle felt about his dad later on in life, and how much of an effort, even with his with Michael's own kids, how he wanted Joe to be a huge part of it. Like the kids knew Joe, the kids were around Joe a lot in that way. And so I think from my perspective, and especially, and I know we'll talk about this a little later, but it's important for me to be as someone that was around and also in this family to carry that torch for Joe and make sure that he isn't just painted as a villain, but also a genius, and also someone that later on in life realized his faults and also was forgiven for his faults. I can tell you one of the hardest things for me was seeing him at the hospice and seeing the whole family there. Jermaine wasn't there because he was overseas, but the whole family was there for their dad. And that was such a sight for me to see, and out of respect and love. And so that is, I will always carry that with me, and I will always carry that pride and that memory with me, that, if he was such a monster, no one would have showed up. They would have let him die by himself. They were all there, everyone, to honor this man, and at his funeral as well, to honor him and to thank him for what he had done, because none of them would have been there without Joe Jackson.
Absolutely. Well, maybe time will eventually be kinder to him. I think it's easy for people to hate on him to create a certain narrative they want, and hard to say if that will change, but I do hope it does over time.
It's going to take family.
Yeah.
It's just like Janet said in her docu-series, she was very much giving her father props for, yes, there's no secret how hard he was on them, but she definitely gave him his props and his respect in terms of that she wouldn't have been who she was if it wasn't for him. So I think it's just going to come from people that stand up, that were close to him, or family members, changing the narrative and correcting, the lies that are out there about him in that way. I shouldn't say the lies, just the one-sided narrative. It's almost like a narrative that's been carried over, and it's half of his life, but it's not the latter part of his life. And it's not what I knew. Yes, my grandfather was intimidating, but my grandfather was always great to us, me and my brothers. And my dad would always say, you should have seen him back then, son, like that. But so when we would tell, grandfather's not that, not that scary and all that stuff. But it was he was intimidating. He loved that, and he loved to play off of that. And then he would smile and laugh if he knew that he intimidated you. So there's a game aspect to it too.
So moving on to our next topic, which is also related to someone the estate has hired to work on a really important project who has maybe not been so kind to Michael Jackson in the past. We have Nelson George's Thriller 40 documentary, which has been announced, and then which also, as part of the Thriller 40 events this past month, was shown in an unfinished, admittedly, I guess, draft form at several different fan events around the world. So I know both of our Charlies have seen this, and you definitely want to refer to our Thriller 40 episode for most of Carter's comments. But I would like to start with Charlie Thomson to let us know a little bit about about how that fan event went and your thoughts on seeing this unfinished documentary on Thriller.
Yes, it's hard to comment not knowing how unfinished it is. Obviously, when it was announced, they just said it was a screening of the documentary. And then at some point after everybody booked their tickets, they changed the description and said it was an unfinished version of the documentary. So I don't know what that means, whether it was a deadline that was missed or something. I went to the London screening at the Curzon Soho, which was maybe 2/3 full. And, I mean, of course, most of the audience was, so if not all of the audience, apart from the invited Sony guests, were very enthusiastic Michael Jackson fans, many of whom had shown up dressed as Michael Jackson. And so, I mean, you put those people in a room and then put Michael on the screen and you're not going to get a bad review of them. But, I mean, I've tried to watch it with a critical but objective eye. It seemed to me that you had most of the ingredients that you would need to put together a great documentary about Thriller, but somehow it added up to less than the sum of its parts. Is the first problem with it was that right out of the gate, it's just very nebulous. It doesn't really have any kind of mission statement. So the beginning of the documentary is just quite a protracted sort of montage of archive clips of Michael in music videos or on stage with celebrities popping up going, "Oh, Michael was brilliant." So as a non-fan, there would be nothing there to engage you at all, especially if you were someone that maybe harbored some skepticism towards Michael. You'd be going, "Oh, this just looks like a puff piece. I think I'll switch channels." There was nothing about it which said, Thriller has been the biggest selling album in the world for the last 40 years. Let's investigate why that is. What made it the most successful album in history and why has it endured? There was nothing that set up what the mission statement of the documentary was supposed to be. It just kind of felt like a weird kind of fan-edited montage. It definitely felt less cinematic than Spike Lee's documentary. I wasn't necessarily a big fan of the Spike Lee documentaries either, but this felt very much televisual as opposed to cinematic. It's filled with unseen footage. So you have footage of Michael in the studio recording the album that's never been seen. You have behind-the-scenes footage from the music videos. You have footage of Michael being interviewed, which has never been seen. There's a lot in there which is brand new. Lots of very good quality Victory Tour footage. However, as I say, most of the fans in the room, you stick them in a cinema and put unseen footage of Michael on the screen, they're going to whoop and cheer and go, "Yeah, this is brilliant." But, looking at it as a journalist, trying to put my journalist hat on and say, "Is this a good documentary?" I just came away from it thinking, no, it's shapeless, it's nebulous, it has no narrative structure, really. I mean, the longer it goes on, the more it sort of develops a narrative structure, but it takes a long time to start doing that. It's filled with tangents that don't need to be in there. There's quite a lengthy tangent all about the E.T. storybook, which is just completely irrelevant, didn't need to be in there. You get halfway through the documentary, and then for no apparent reason, somebody from TikTok appears on the screen and says how many billions of views Michael's music has had on TikTok. But it's just in the middle of the doc. You could understand if that was at the end. If at the end of the documentary they were saying, and 40 years on, the legacy endures, here's somebody from TikTok. But you're just in the middle of this documentary about the making of Thriller. And then for apropos of nothing, just for no discernible reason whatsoever, Joe Blogs from TikTok comes on screen and starts talking about TikTok for about, it was almost felt like an advertorial had just been inserted into the middle of the documentary. It's very bizarre. So, I mean, it has its problems. Of course, another one of the problems is that it is essentially amounts to another attack on the Jackson family. Again, no Jackson family members are interviewed for the documentary, and the discussion of the Victory Tour is basically all about how nobody was interested in seeing the brothers. Everybody that bought a ticket was only interested in seeing Michael perform songs from Thriller. He was bullied into doing the Victory Tour. He didn't want to do it. The same old Victory Tour narrative. There's some notable omissions. Vince Patterson is not interviewed. No family members are interviewed. Ola Ray is not interviewed. Quincy is not interviewed. Of course, other people are not interviewed.
Was Howard Bloom in there?
No Howard Bloom. So there are quite a lot of people who are alive and kicking and would have been good to interview and are not in it. And instead you have interviews with, like, there's one section, again, like I was saying, there's these weird diversions. There's an interview with the rapper. Do you remember last year on the Christmas episode, you were asking me if I'd seen a video by a rapper who did like a 2-minute song based on Smooth Criminal.
Oh, Polo G.
Polo G. He's in there. He's interviewed talking all about Smooth Criminal. And you're going, this is a documentary about Thriller. Why is Polo G being interviewed about Smooth Criminal? So there's people that are quite... Yeah, there's people that are quite integral to the era that are not interviewed. And then you have these very bizarre creative decisions that have been taken to interview people that have no relevance whatsoever. And Polo G was a particularly odd one because it's not even like he's on there saying, oh yeah, I made a song out of Thriller or I made a song out of Billie Jean. It's Smooth Criminal. So what on earth is the relevance? It's so bizarre. And the other thing that was really noticeable actually was that some of the archive is appalling quality. So like at one point they're playing the Don't Stop Till You Get Enough music video. It looks like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a VHS. It's so poor, the quality. And you're going, how is a Michael Jackson estate product presenting his work in quality this bad? It doesn't make any sense at all. I would say in the form that I saw it in, it was probably somewhere between a 6 and a 7 out of 10. And with some good editing, with a bit of extra narrative structure, which wouldn't be too difficult to insert, you could probably up it to somewhere between an 8 and a 9. But will that happen? I don't know. I just don't know. There's certainly things that need to be chopped out of it because they're irrelevant. And the structure of it could be fixed relatively easily by having a narration, some kind of thing on the beginning that says 40 years, let's investigate what made it a hit and why it endured. But at the moment, it just feels like a sizzle reel that at some point after about 15 minutes turns into a documentary. It's very strange. And then, of course, you've got the lingering concerns that many fans have about the choice of director Nelson George. The previous 2 documentaries, the Bad and Off the Wall documentaries, were made by Spike Lee, who had publicly expressed an interest in making the Thriller documentary. He said in an interview with Rolling Stone words to the effect of, I can't wait to make the Thriller documentary because I'm going to jam my Air Jordan straight up MTV's arse, something like that. And for reasons which are hitherto unexplained, Spike Lee has not been at the helm of the Thriller documentary, and he's been replaced by Nelson George, who has a long history of being extremely negative or uncharitable towards Michael in his journalism. So yeah, that's a concern as well. It's a bit like the Lynn Nottage dilemma, why Nelson George? It's interesting because all the way through the documentary, you keep seeing Nelson George's articles about Michael pop up with Nelson George written on them as well. So it's slightly egomaniacal. Anyway, yeah, Charlie, what did you think? I wasn't on the Thriller roundtable, the Thriller 40 roundtable.
Yeah, I won't go over every point that we did on there, but I'll try and sort of do it in a nutshell. And that I can't disagree with a lot of what you've said there, in that there were things just sort of randomly put in there and there didn't seem to be a cohesive order. Obviously, we've got to remember that this was still in the draft phase, although, generally speaking, it is going to broadly be what we eventually see as the final product. The takeaways that I had for it, you mentioned there about it feeling a bit more like a televisual program rather than a cinematic. My thinking behind that is that I don't know if it is going to go out into cinemas and theaters around the world, but they are looking for a streaming platform for it. I don't know if they've secured that yet or indeed announced it. So I can sort of understand that. I sort of disagree with what you said about the E.T. storybook and its relevance, just purely because that is something that was going on and around that time, and it adds a little bit of context to some of the wider work that Michael was doing at the time. But there are omissions, like they go through some of the songs most of the songs on the album. My disappointment is they didn't spend long enough on human nature, because you've got people like Steve Porcaro who are on record saying how that song came to be and how that song ended up in the hands of Michael Jackson. And that story is a great story. So to include that on the documentary about the 40th anniversary of this monumental album, I think would have been great. And to have it, all together in one place with the stories of the other songs. There was obviously some highlights, things we haven't seen before, like in-studio footage of Michael and Paul McCartney recording The Girl Is Mine. There's what looks like good quality, high quality footage from the Victory Tour. Overall, I quite liked the documentary. I enjoyed it for what it was. When you look at things with a wider context, the Nelson George aspect of it, you can sort of go around in circles asking questions about potential negative influences on Michael's legacy being involved in a positive production. But underneath it all, it is a positive production. It is underlining the genius of Michael Jackson. And I think that that's the important takeaway when it comes to his legacy.
I agree with you on that front. My concern is that in the current format, if I was not a fan, I would have switched it off. That was how I felt watching it, was that there was no narrative hook, which if you were not just a huge Michael Jackson fan who's excited by seeing footage that you've never seen before, then what was the hook? And to me, it felt like it had no narrative purpose, no shape, no structure. It just felt like a montage of footage, which was somewhat directionless. You're right, though. That was another thing I forgot, was that eventually it did attain a sort of shape, which was that it was following the single releases from the album, broadly speaking. It was sort of started with The Girl Is Mine, and then you got to Thriller and the record labels saying, you're insane, don't make the music video, it costs too much money. And then there were a couple of songs that then just never got addressed at all. I think it was PYT and Lady in My Life. They just never even got mentioned.
Lady in My Life was sort of brushed over very briefly, and you're right, I don't remember PYT being mentioned at all.
Yeah, strange decisions.
See, for me, that goes to the point I said earlier, like, who's the audience? As a fan, I would have loved to hear stories about PYT and Lady in My Life, and I haven't seen the documentary, but, when people think of Thriller, I mean, yeah, people do think of PYT a lot, but I think that's more on the dance floor. But you think of Beat It, you think of Billie Jean, you think of Thriller, and maybe Girl Is Mine because it was Paul McCartney in that way. And so I feel like they did the commercial version of like, hey, here's the songs that everyone knows. Here's the songs that are big on Spotify and blah, blah, blah. And that's what we're going to focus on. One of my favorite songs is Human Nature. So I think that's a travesty that they didn't go into that. But I can also say that song wasn't a number one song of Michael's either. So it's like, do you cater towards the number one songs, or you cater towards the songs that have lived past? Like, I feel that Human Nature is a more important song than Girl Is Mine, in my opinion. And I was going to say a better song. Okay, for me, it's a better song in that. I'll just say
it's a better song.
I don't know why that's controversial. I
would have taken Hot Street over The Girl Is Mine. Just
like Human Nature is just, it has a soft spot in my heart. Just even watching my uncle perform that on stage, it's like it was one of my favorite songs to watch him do. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. It's just, okay, we're trying to reach a broad audience here. Let's do the songs that they know. But then, Charles, you're right. If it doesn't have a hook, those people aren't going to watch anyway, or they're going to turn it off 5 minutes in. And so that's the concern for me, but I haven't seen it.
I'm so glad that you said that Human Nature is up there as one of your favorite songs, because that's something that we have in common. It's definitely in my top 3. And I think I've been on record on the show before saying that the version that was put out on the This Is It movie, as much as there's a lot of controversy around that movie, that's one of my favorite versions of that song. It's just so soulful and melodic and it just draws you in. And that's why I wanted them to expand on that particular song.
Mm-hmm.
But what that documentary did do around The Girl Is Mine, and probably why they focused on it, is they sort of focused on Michael's intelligence when it came to marketing himself, and how he, in order to cross over to a quote unquote white audience, he would attach himself to quote unquote white musical figures such as Paul McCartney. Okay, that's a way to get this whole thing going. Who's the most famous white guitarist of the time? Eddie Van Halen. Okay, let's get him in on Beat It. So they sort of probably focused on that side of the promotion rather than the song The Girl Is Mine itself.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah.
It sounds like the whole narrative aspect of it, Charlie, that you were talking about being lacking at the start. Marcos Cabota's Sonic Fantasy comes to mind with nailing that aspect, how he was talking about, you know, the record label, the record industry being in dire straits, and the video game industry had come and sort of overtaken it. And there was a mission between, you know, Bruce Swedien, Quincy Jones, Matt Forger and Michael to you know, save the industry. And I thought that was a really excellent narrative to start it off with.
Yeah, and that's not really mentioned at all in this estate documentary. And the other thing that Marcos's documentary did better was interviewing people that actually worked on the album. I mean, there's a bit of that in the estate documentary. Matt Forger is in it, and a couple of other people are in it, but they're in it very briefly. At one point, they interview some guy that wasn't in the studio. That's one of the most baffling moments in the whole documentary. I mean, I view things differently as a journalist, of course.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm noticing things that are happening and going, why on earth have they done that? But they interview this guy who didn't even work on the album, but just worked somewhere else in the Quincy Jones sphere. And so his contribution to the documentary is they've wasted a whole day, presumably, filming this guy. And he says, yeah, I remember that the guys that were working on Thriller, they would come out of the studio and they'd say, wow, is really cooking in there. Something like that. It's like, why have you filmed this guy? What was the point of that? That's probably cost $1,000 or something for you to film. And then they have interviewed Forger. That's time they could have given to Forger, but they've not. They've interviewed some guy that wasn't even fucking there. So it just doesn't, there's a lot of it that doesn't make any sense. You can't really understand the decisions behind what has and has not been included. So that bothers me as somebody that is involved in, not in television, I don't work in television, but is involved in storytelling and structuring stories. I'm just sort of dismantling it as it's happening, going, why have you interviewed that guy? What was the purpose of that? Doesn't make any sense. So why is Polo G here? That's 2 minutes you could have spent with Matt Forger or somebody that was in the studio working on the thing. Instead, you've stuck this guy in talking, but not even talking about the Thriller. What the fuck? So it is a very eccentric. The version the version that we've seen, the work in progress, was eccentric, I thought, in a lot of its decision making. It'll be interesting to see what is or is not changed before it comes out. It felt like estate interference. That was what it felt like. I mean, that's purely speculation on my part, but the TikTok thing, it just felt like crowbarred in to demonstrate that the estate has made a brilliant decision to let Michael's music go on TikTok. That just felt like what that was. It was like a piece of propaganda, which it did not in any way serve the narrative of the documentary, certainly not in the position that it was in. And it was almost like it had been crowbarred in for no relevance to anything which preceded it or succeeded it. It was just an island in the middle of the documentary, which was irrelevant to everything around it. It felt like Nelson George was not a director in control of his own film. That was the impression that I got. And it was a similar impression I got actually from Spike Lee's documentaries when we watched those. For example, in the Bad 25 documentary, in the middle of it, for absolutely no reason whatsoever, there's some guy just telling a story about how terrible the Jackson family are. Apropos of nothing. Bears no relation to anything which precedes it or succeeds it. It's just crowbarred in just for no reason. So yeah, it felt like it felt like Nelson George was not wearing the trousers.
Well, and I think we have to remember too, and we've said it before in the show, that a documentary, as you mentioned, Jamon, a documentary about Thriller, very specific about the journey of the Thriller album, exists, and the estate would not give permission for Marcos Cabota to include the music of Michael Jackson in that film, which kind of destroyed it. I mean, I think it's a really good film, and I think it will rise above that, but it's hard to watch it without the music. They have that while they have hired this problematic person and interviewed a bunch of people who don't matter. It's just continues to completely baffle me.
Yeah, all they had to do was say, cool, hey Marcos, you've got a ready-made amazing documentary about Thriller.
It's there.
Here's all the footage. Here's The Girl Is Mine. Here's the Victory Tour. Here's, demo tracks of the songs and things people haven't heard before. We can line you up to talk to even more people that knew Michael Jackson during this era. You make the Thriller 40 documentary. Like, what's the deal? Why was that not done?
Yeah, if you combined Marcos's interviews with the estate's archive, you would have a damn near perfect documentary. But alas, the estate's is just shapeless. Even if you took Marcos's mission statement, I think that would hook non-fans. If you said Thriller became the biggest selling album of all time when it was released, and 40 years later it's never lost that mantle, we're going to tell you the story of how that happened, and it's because Michael Jackson and his team didn't set out to make the biggest selling album of all time. They set out to save the record industry. That's a great hook. That's something that a non-fan would be, that's interesting. Not really a Michael Jackson fan, but I wonder how they did that. I'm interested in the building blocks of how that happened. But there's just no hook to it. There's no hook to this documentary. You could easily transpose Marcos's hook and all of the estate's archive and a couple of their interviews if you wanted them, if you want Usher for some reason or whatever, or will.i.am or Brooke Shields, transpose those in, but use the shape of Marcos's documentary. Each has something that the other doesn't have. And if you could meld them together, it would be brilliant. Missed opportunity by the estate. Real bad missed opportunity.
And lucky we've got friend of the show, Damien Shields, the genesis of Thriller audio documentary on podcast platforms, which is probably better than all of these things combined anyway. So
It's true.
I've listened to that a number of times, Taj. I'm not sure if you've heard that before. But Damien's The Genesis of Thriller is a fantastic record of how the album was put together.
I haven't heard the whole thing, but I've heard people's response to it, and it's been amazing. So, and I know Damien does incredible stuff anyway. So,
I was lucky enough to meet him for the first time. We'll get onto this when we get to our personal updates in the year about the number of people from the Michael Jackson community that I've managed to meet in the last 12 months or so. But I actually picked Damien up from the airport and we went to this documentary together. And just a funny little thing that happened is we were sitting on our side of the theater. A couple of people had come up that Damien knew and said hello. And then at one point after a friend left, the guy behind said, "Excuse me, is your name Damien?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Is your surname Shields?" And he said, "Yes." And I was expecting this bloke to say, "Oh, I heard your podcast," or "I've read your book," or whatever it is. No, the next words out of his mouth were, "Oh, I'm your cousin." And it turned out to be his cousin that he hadn't seen for years and years and years.
Wow.
What are the odds of that?
An interesting story. Yeah.
MJ brings us all together.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it was interesting to me as well, the limited number of places that they decided to show this documentary. And in Australia, Sydney being the only location. So if anyone from the MJ community wanted to see that in Australia, they had to come here to Sydney. I mean, great for me. I live here. And obviously for Charlie going to London, that was one of the places as well. I was surprised that so few locations were actually given this preview.
Yeah, and equally, actually, considering the tickets were free, I was surprised at how empty the London screening was. There were quite a lot of empty seats in London. I don't know what that means necessarily.
Well, in LA, the information on it was really bad. I was going to try to go, but for me in San Diego, getting to LA on a weeknight can be kind of a nightmare. So when they sent out the notice about it, there was like they wouldn't say where it was, and then the information kept changing. It wasn't very well organized. So I think there was a lot of confusion as well around it.
And just to finish off this section, I guess we'll just touch base a little bit about Nelson George and his history, because where we were talking about Lynn Nottage being a little bit on the fence about Michael, Nelson George is quite a ways over the fence. He's jumped off the fence and just run into the paddock as far as he could. He has said some pretty outlandish things about Michael. I've got a couple of quotes here that I want to read. Okay, so this is one article he wrote a few years ago. It's hilarious how one-sided much of the immediate commentary about the man has been, sinner or saint. More apt is artist and sinner. People want to simplify a truly complex life. We have to be sophisticated enough to acknowledge that greatness and a touch of evil dwelled in the man. I've always believed that transcendent art emanates from the purest, most evolved parts of our soul, but that highly spiritual achievement doesn't absolve us of our daily misdeeds. To simply brand him a smooth criminal, as some have, or to overlook his tragic nature, as have others, is to deny his humanity. The meaning of Michael Jackson's life as a black man, a sexual being, a abused and abusing adult, will be interpreted to fit the prejudices of the speaker. His music, it speaks volumes. And then another one that came out a little while later in The Guardian says, though clearly a little eccentric, Michael, with his breathy voice and childish interest, didn't seem as weird as, say, Prince. A little over 20 years after the triumph of Thriller and now approaching middle age, Michael looks nothing like the little boy I admired. His skin is pale and chalky. He wears bizarre outfits, although he won't go to jail for any of the 10 counts of child molestation or child endangerment he was on trial for. His life and career will remain tainted. His fascination with young boys, young white boys, is still disquieting. The details of his personal life unearthed during the trial will shadow him for the rest of his life. I had emotionally disconnected from Michael over the years, as his skin tone lightened and his public persona darkened. I'm not alone in that. While black Americans are usually quite loyal to our tainted stars, see OJ and Mike Tyson, support for Michael seems more muted. I suspect this is as much because of his ongoing loss of pigment as for the crimes he's been accused of. None of his explanations for how he grew lighter have been very convincing. It is one thing to have a white district attorney target you. Black people understand that game. It is another when you seem, and I use seem since there's no hard evidence for this, to have willfully tried to de-black yourself. So these are the quotes of the director the estate have hired to make the Thriller 40 documentary.
And even just on the face of it, it's easy to sort of go through and basically sentence by sentence say why that is wrong. So it's an interesting decision to go with him over someone who's clearly pro Michael Jackson and has experience in making documentaries such as Spike Lee.
And these are all articles that are actively online. They've not been taken down. It's crazy. And they come up right when you Google him. I mean, it's just,
And there's heaps of them. It's not like he's written one article about it. He's written like maybe a dozen or more, all saying these kind of things. I just find it shocking. And this is one of the reasons I actually want to talk to him. He'll probably never talk to us now if he listens to this episode. But I would love to just straight up ask Nelson George, how can you insinuate that Michael Jackson is a pedophile or intentionally tried to lighten his skin when there's so much evidence to the contrary?
I think Nelson George also, he vowed when the Casio tracks were released in 2010, certain fans messaged him on Twitter and implored him to investigate, and he said that he would. The tweets are still online. He said, I'll look into it. And then he was next seen at a party being thrown by the MJ estate, posing for official pictures at an estate event somewhere. I forget what it was for now. But it was just like, oh, you know, this is the guy that's supposed to be in the middle of his investigation into the Casio tracks, and here he is at some party that's being thrown by the estate. You couldn't make it up, you know. So he's an interesting character. He reminds me a bit of Roger Friedman, who sort of just veers wildly between being pro-Michael and anti-Michael, depending on who spoke to him last. Sort of Trump-esque. Very strange. Why would you be going to Michael Jackson estate events if you think that he's a child molester? It's very peculiar. Well, Taj, I mean, you've not said anything, but how does it feel to hear these quotes from Nelson George and then know that the estate is paying him to work on projects?
Well, I'm going off of when originally on Twitter I found out, and the quotes were there and all that, and there's obviously disappointment, especially since there's hundreds to thousands of directors that would jump at an opportunity to do a Michael Jackson documentary, especially thriller. I don't know. It's hard for me to. We talked about this earlier. It's just hard for me to get excited about someone benefiting off of a project when they have that circulating around. For me, the first prerequisite to hiring someone would be making him do an article or something saying that first educating him and then making him do an article explaining that he got it wrong and that he's now learned the truth, and hopefully he's done the research to have done that. But I don't like when it's just floated around and there's no apology. There's no, we have these quotes, but there's nothing to say, hey, I was wrong. They just get rewarded anyway. And so I don't like someone winning off of my uncle losing, if that makes sense. There's enough, and why reward enemies? I'm not being so vicious as I could be, only because I've tried to be nicer. I'm trying, in that way, and just detached, just learning that, there's just people that are going to be ignorant. There's just people that want my uncle to be guilty, that have, I don't know, ultimatums, just like another artist better. So they're just going to pick on my uncle and they're going to just ram those lies down people's throats just because they can. I mean, obviously the quotes that he was saying that we just took from what he had said in his articles and stuff like that, a lot of them are so easily provable false that it just, I question when someone's considered a journalist and you can do a 2-second search and realize that a lot of that isn't true. So it's like, I think as a journalist, you should go back and say, either take your stuff off the internet because it's not relevant anymore and it's not true anymore, or make corrections to it and say, this is what I thought, but it's now been shown that Michael Jackson had vitiligo and, blah, 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 blah. And here's what vitiligo is. But just to leave it up there as an ignorant piece of text is kind of disheartening, and that this person got rewarded for that.
Fully agree with that, Taj.
That was my nice version, by the way.
Someday we'll get to hear your really angry version. No, it still has a ton of good insights, and couldn't agree with you more. It is sad. Hopefully the estate will get a clue at some point, but I'm doubtful about that. So who knows? So coming out of that rather depressing news, we do have some fun news we wanted to share as well. There has been a little interesting development percolating, which is, again, just a fun thing, but I think quite significant. So all of us know that Michael Jackson did work with Sega on different projects. I know one of those was Moonwalker. Of course, there was Sonic 3, but there was also this project called Scramble Training. It was a simulator game, and really some really bad, I think, like screenshots have existed about this in the past, but just recently a gaming fan, his name is Ben Bisley, he actually found this tape in a UK flea market, and which he paid £300 for. Whoa. And he has in fact released, and we'll put a link in the show notes, released the footage, and it's the entire footage with Michael Jackson in the simulator and narrating this kind of simulation game. And so this is a big deal for, a slice of the fan community and those, I think, in gaming as well. I think it's actually quite cool. And, it shows the reach that Michael had into different areas and the other types of projects he wanted to do. I also think this is like a perfect mashup of like Captain EO and Space Tours.
Yes, it is.
100% in like late era MJ. So I actually completely enjoy this. I think you will have, again, the link in our show notes. You can watch the entire thing and it's super fun. I just think this is a great fun thing. And thank you so much to Ben for sharing this with the fan community. It's awesome. You could have kept this in a vault somewhere and you didn't. And we really appreciate that. Any other comments, Jamon? Would you like to say anything else on that?
Oh, look, as a big video game fan and Michael Jackson fan, I think this is really cool. I mean, the footage is fun and cute, and I'm just fascinated by the world of Michael Jackson and video gaming in general, how engaged he was with video games. He was on the forefront with the Moonwalker game that came out in the very late 80s. I played that at a friend's house. That was my first thing I ever had to do with Michael Jackson ever, was going to my friend's house in like 6th grade or whatever, and he had a copy of Moonwalker, the video game, and I played it and I loved it. And, you know, it's a little known fact that Michael Jackson was there as a guest of Sony at the original PlayStation's launch. There's photos of that. I don't think there's any video. But I just love the idea of how engaged Michael was with video games and how much he gave back to his fans that were also gamers through being involved in some of these projects. And I actually have a question for Taj on this. I'm having spent a lot of time at Neverland in your younger days. Do you have any recollections or stories of Michael Jackson, your uncle, the gamer?
You know, it's Uncle Michael, basically. He was very good at pinball. There's certain games that he was good at, but then there's certain games that he was horrible at. And so, and usually those were the more popular games, you know, the Street Fighters and all that stuff. Anything that was a little, that you had to mash buttons and all that stuff. But he loved video games and he loved arcade games in general. But that's also because the people that he was hanging around, like me and my brothers and other people, they loved video games. And so he would always be fascinated and ask us questions of why we like this system or which system's the best and why do we like this system. I mean, we were big Sega fans, me and my brothers, over Nintendo actually back in the day. And so we were really happy when he went with Sega as opposed to Nintendo, just because we just love Sega. But he used to tell us stories about, you know, he was going to be in this game or I remember with Royal Rumble on the Dreamcast, he let us see some preliminary stuff before it was even announced or released. And he said he had to do some stuff with it. So it was just exciting to see behind the scenes of his love for video games and arcades. And he loved watching people play it as well. Like that was another thing. So he knew the importance of it. And so this being leaked online, you know, decades later, it's a treat to see. It brought a lot of joy to me to see that, because it did have that perfect mixture of Captain EO and Star Tours in that, which I know he loved Star Tours because I was there when they opened it with him. I think there's a parade, or I don't know what it was, but we were there with him when it was opened. I just know how much he loved that, and yeah, obviously Captain EO. So I think there's a synergy with Michael Jackson and video games that I personally, and I'm not going to say much, but I'm still advocating for and have some ideas for, because Michael Jackson is synonymous with video games and arcade games as well.
Exciting.
That's very cool. I love it.
Michael obviously had like a real affinity with, and apologies for the pronunciation, but in Australia we say Sega, not Sega. But I think when we interviewed one of the dancers on the Dangerous World tour, who was it? I can't remember now. But he talked about Michael having an early release version of a game or one of the consoles on the tour bus. And the dancers would just spend all the time playing Sonic or something on the tour bus.
Yeah, he was loyal to Sega. I'll tell you that. He talked about Sega a lot and loved Sonic in that way. And so obviously he participated in what he could for Sonic in that way. And I think he had a great relationship with Sega in general. And I do appreciate how they treated him back then.
Well, you know what? I'm going to bring a third pronunciation into this, because in the UK we pronounced it Sega. And my friend had a Sega Mega Drive, and I loved Sonic 1 and 2. And when I found out that Michael was involved in Sonic 3, it just blew my mind.
Yeah.
I was never allowed to own one when I was a kid. My parents didn't like video games or anything like that. But they did relent, and I did have a Super Nintendo. I can't remember if I had Moonwalker on it or not. But even that didn't last long because my dad was in the Air Force and he got stationed down in the Falkland Islands for 4 months, took the Nintendo with him and didn't bring it back.
I love it. I hear some resentment. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Charlie, I used to have Sonic on the Mega Drive, and definitely in the UK, when you plugged Sonic into the machine and it booted up, it used to go Sega.
Yeah. Exactly right.
I think we're pronouncing it right, and everyone else is wrong.
Pronouncing it wrong.
Well, how am I pronouncing it? What am I saying wrong?
You're saying Sega.
And you're saying Sega?
Sega.
Okay.
That sounds the same to me.
And then in Australia, we say Sega.
Yeah.
Sega is definitely wrong.
Well, that, yeah. I won't go that far.
Well, I have a little Sega Mini, and supposedly you can hack it somehow to put Moonwalker on it, but I haven't figured that out yet.
Well, when I was a bit older, I got a PlayStation 2 was my first one that I bought myself. So I was well into my teens by then. And then a PlayStation 3 where there was like a Mega Drive mix or something, and Sonic was on those as well. So that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've actually played Sonic with my uncle, like, in general. He wasn't that good, but we but neither was I. To be fair, back then with Sonic, I wasn't as good in Sonic anyway. But he appreciated video games. He really, when there was a collaboration with Sega or Sega, he loved. It was a collaboration. It wasn't him just slapping his name on it. It was something where he was really heavily involved in it. That I do know because I did see a lot of behind the scenes.
Yeah. And if listeners want to learn more about that, they can tune into our episode 100, I think, with Brad Buxer, where he goes into a lot of fine detail about the music for Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
Yes. Well, Taj, I just have to thank you we've had so many interesting kind of unexpected side conversations in this episode, and thank you so much. And in this Sega chat was part of that too. I was expecting that to be a little tiny news item, and look at all the great stories you told us. So thank you so much. Yeah. And with that in mind, we'd love to just actually focus on you a bit more and get a few more updates on what's going on in your life. And if you're able to kind of just give an official, bird's eye view update on your own documentary project, we'd love to hear that. And then we have a few little questions for you too about what's going on in your life right now.
Okay. Yeah.
But maybe we can start with the documentary.
Yeah. The docu-series has always been exciting for me. One of the things that was important and still is important to me is the 2023 release of it. That is something that is a deadline that I don't want to miss. And that way, just knowing what's coming down the pipeline, but also what's coming beforehand, I think that's kind of the perfect spot for it in that way. Obviously, I don't want to rush anything, but I also feel comfortable with where I'm at right now in terms of making that reality. Now, saying all of that, it's been really interesting watching other documentaries come out and docuseries come out, and just seeing how they perform, but also kind of seeing what I would want to do different or similar to those as well, but also how I want to take it to the next level of in terms of just how my uncle would have wanted. I do think that, I yap so much. I don't know what I've given away or not given away. I've obviously 11 episodes is a lot of episodes, but at the same time, that is something that I feel you can't tell Michael Jackson's story in less time to do it just and to be fair about it in a way. I also, one of the things that we discussed, which was a new thing in a way that I am really excited about is, and I've always preached about this, about the people that knew him best and telling kind of through his eyes and his words and stuff, but also through interviews of everyone that knew him and the close proximity of that. But I listened to someone early on that and I don't even know who it was, but it really crippled me in a way because I was so terrified of the family angle because I didn't want it to sound like a family puff piece. So I shied away from the family for the longest time because I just didn't want it to seem like, oh, this is the family's reaction to this, to whatever this 2019, I'm not even going to mention the name, thing that came out. And so I was reminded recently how important the family is and how I don't even know how I could have done this without family interviews and because they were the people that knew him best. They were the ones that went through the career with him. They were the ones that saw him succeed, saw him suffer, saw him upset, saw him happy. And so that was a new revelation to me that really kind of freed me from a lot of things. I was just so worried of being kind of lopsided, but at the same time, once the story became not about trying to be journalistic fair and like, hey, both sides, but more of this is a story about Michael Jackson from the people that knew him best, and this is our story. In that way, I think that was the freeing aspect of it because no one can tell his story better than his friends and his family.
Fully agree. And also just so respect that you are doing this as a series and you want to really tell the full story, which so many documentaries don't do. Just because fans will ask, and hearing you talk about, also talking to your own family members and things like that, can you give us a sense of how many interviews you actually have like filmed at this point, where you are in the process?
I can, but I won't.
Okay.
Charles knows why, but I can't, and I won't, only because I think they'll gauge whatever I say as that staple of where I'm at and where I should be. I can tell you,
Fully understand.
I can tell you that I'm doing things backwards in a way, because what we're doing is we're shaping the story from archival footage and other things aspect of it. And then the interviews kind of supplement the stories and kind of reinforce them. And I don't want to give too much of my strategy away, but that's kind of what I think will be different and more unique. Mm-hmm. The interviews are more explanation points and they're more of the little nuggets. But I think to truly get to know Michael Jackson and understand him, you have to see the footage and you have to see him either say something or the video footage of him doing something. I think that is the trick of this docu-series. And I just, why I'm so tight-lipped and secret is because I feel like sometimes when I say certain things and whatever, other people pick up on it and then they kind of beat me to it in that way. And they'll do something that I said I was going to do. And then fans are like, well, what's the difference between yours and this person's now? Because they just did what you said you were going to do. And I'm like, that's a good question. So I'm going to have to do something different now. And so it's not, and look, I wish every project success because I don't care if it comes from my project or from someone else's project, the truth. I don't care if people will become a fan or learn the truth about Michael Jackson through my project or any other project. But it makes it harder when people ask me, to talk about the project, and then I do, and then other people incorporate it, what I've said. And that is the hard thing because I am trying to be different in that way. And so at some points you don't become different anymore when your ideas are being used.
Very cool.
Totally understand. Yeah.
That's why I'm more secretive. I'm one of those people that I can't tell you how many Christmas presents I've already given to my daughters because I can't wait. I'm like one of those people that can't like I'm like the worst person in terms of wrapping because I'm like it comes from Amazon and then I'm already excited to give it to them and I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to get another present now. And so this is the hardest thing for me is not sharing my excitement of, oh, we got this footage or I just saw this or I know where this is. I had a dream 2 days ago that I just remembered and I can't even share that with anyone. I mean, Charles, I'll share that with you, but it opened up a world of possibilities in that way that I didn't even, it's almost like I had to confirm with my brothers of like, that's what we heard, right? In that way. And so there's a lot of excitement going on in that way. And I still feel like this is going to be a project that cements his legacy. But at the same time, I'm just more aware of the atmosphere now. And I wish every project the best. I wish every project succeeds and does, what Square One does or better in that way, because we're all in it for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to ask about like the logistics of things. Like there's obviously so many people around the place that you want to get on record and you want to speak to. Is there a lot of you and your team going out to them to film them in their locations, or is it more of a thing where people are coming to you and you've got a space where you're filming?
No, I didn't want to do a central location because what I really wanted to do logistically for me, the important thing was authenticity. So if I can capture people at their natural habitat, or even best at a place where Michael visited or stayed at, that is better to me than for them to come to a hotel room. And I think for authenticity reasons, you want to get people at their natural habitat and where they are and where they live. And so just for authenticity reasons, I would want to fly if it was someone. It's just, you got to fly to them, and it's for them to feel more natural. And if Michael visited them, then even better, and they can show that around. And in general, I just think it's better to capture them at their own place or their own city or country in that way. So there's a lot of traveling.
Another thing I want to ask Taj, and this is a bit of a delicate one or a sensitive one, I guess, but obviously there are corners of the fan community, even sometimes people in positions of prominence, different Michael Jackson content creators, the users at the Black Jackson Estate podcast come to mind. And I get a bit confused by the whole thing where they call themselves user 1, user 2. But anyway, one of the people on that podcast, they have very publicly on their recent episodes called you some, even some pretty full-on things like, being fraudulent and just taking money from the fan community and not wanting, this project may not even come, that kind of thing. And so I guess I just wanted to hear from you directly, when you hear things like that online, what does that do to you, and what is your response to that general vibe within the community, these quote unquote Jackson family fans who are out there saying that you are robbing or stealing money from Michael's fans?
I would say, and it's a delicate issue because look, if they invested, then they have every right to be skeptical. But I would say to them, for how they are being very vocal when this does come out and it does do what it needs to do, will they be equally as vocal about their apology? That's all I would ask in that way, or equally as vocal in their promotion of it. I don't even need an apology. I just, would you go promote it now? You rooted against it. Would you go promote it now? In that way. And look, my whole career, even with 3T, people either voted against us, bet against us with me and my brothers. Our first reviews when we came out with our album were horrible because they didn't want us to succeed. And then we succeeded anyway. And then those C's and D's from, top magazines like Top of the Pops and Smash Hits became A's and B's. And B pluses and A minus. I don't think we got a B after our success. It was like A. This album's an A, this single's an A, and everything like that. But the first ones welcoming us were not very pleasant because it's easy to count someone out and to think that it's not going to happen. And to their credit, it's been a long time. But at the same time, there's been a pandemic and there's been certain things that have shifted in that way. And it's not like I disappeared for 3 years and like that. I've been on not even dozens. The dozens like undercutting me. Gazillions of podcasts, shows defending Michael, being interviewed, doing docu-series being interviewed for other people's documentaries, being involved in other people's documentaries, books, and other things, because I'm looking at the big picture. I'm looking at this is for Michael. And yes, my project is late, but I also know 90% of Michael Jackson's albums were late, and people don't even remember that anymore. And so that's the Jackson mindset. People, if it's great, people won't care if it was late.
Yeah, it's just got to be right. And you know, Taj, we're 100% in your corner at the MJCast and really believe in you and can't wait for it to come out.
Thank you.
For those people out there who feel like your word is not enough, which is just ridiculous, it should be. But for those people listening, Charlie Thomson is, you know, here with us at the MJCast, works with us. He's also on your team. Charlie's been at Hamid Moslehi's place and seen some of this footage that hopefully will end up in the documentary.
Yes.
He's helping you to craft it and put it together. What more evidence do people need that this thing is in motion?
Well, and Charlie's a secret, well, he's not a secret weapon because, everyone knows that. But at the same time, what I learned is you always surround your people with the best in that way. And I learned that from my uncle. He said that's the secret ingredient is you surround yourself with the best people. So building the all-star team is the most important thing to me, because then everything else becomes secondary. And that team hasn't been easy to build because you have to vet people. You have to know people's hearts are in the right position. And you also have to know that they're capable of it in that way. And I can tell you that the team that we have now, even though some other people are new to this game, I'm very excited about our team in that way. And I know that from the quality that I want to deliver, which is probably going to exceed everyone else's opinion of what they think the quality is going to be, that I know our team can pull that off and will pull that off. So Charles is why I said secret weapon is just because he's one of the people that I feel as long as he's on the team, there's going to be there's already a certain quality aspect to it in that way, because he keeps me honest. I'll keep him honest in that we're making the best product we can for the legacy.
Oh, thank you, Taj. That's very sweet. And I'm looking forward to working with you.
Yeah.
We're so excited, Taj, to see it when it comes together. And just from the fan community, we appreciate all you are doing to uphold your uncle's legacy and uphold the truth. Yeah. And on that front, you know, you mentioned earlier that you're totally supportive of like other projects coming out. This is much more of like a fan kind of smaller homegrown project, but just curious about whether you've been kind of engaging with anything else. So for example, what I'm mentioning as the homegrown project is there is a podcast that's come out by a mother-daughter duo called Michael Jackson Case for Innocence. And we're just so curious, are you aware of this one? Do you have any thoughts on that or any similar stuff that's come out in the last few months?
I'm very aware of it, and one of the people on my team made me aware of it, and I'm very excited. I'm not fully finished with it. I think I'm on episode 3, so I'm still in the Chandler case, but it's very well done in terms of that. And I commend people for doing their own research and then also putting something together for other people to see and to take in that way. And I only get to kind of listen to it when I'm in my car. That's how I do podcasts usually in general. So, but yeah, I mean, I always welcome fans, or in this case, a mother that the daughter was a fan and, you know, just for her own due diligence had to research and then found out the truth, and now has, with her daughter, created this podcast. And so those kind of stories are very not only important to me, but they're inspiring to me in a way, because even in today's age, people are doing the research, and it just proves that aspect. And I commend the daughter for being such a fan that the mom had to, you know, do her own research. And I think that's going to be the case for a lot of the younger generation, which is why the docu-series is so important, because it's not for, I hate to say this and people are going to get upset. It's not for us. It's not for, I mean, us as fans, we know the truth and whatever. It's for the general public that's loves his music, secretly dances to his music, either at home or quietly dances to it at a club or whatever, but is scared to dance to it because of being shamed or whatever. And it's also for future generations who is very curious about Michael Jackson and who he is. And is there any truth to all this? And I want to get rid of all this nonsense before it becomes folklore. And it's like, oh, but there was this rumor. And it's like, he doesn't deserve that. And if you don't address that, then 50 years down the line, 100 years down the line, that'll be brought up, and it doesn't need to be. And real quick, it doesn't bother me that if people talk about the trial and what he had to go through, that he was accused of this, because that's part of his life and part of the journey. But it's the perception that, oh, we'll never know. And, it's he said, and that kind of stuff bothers me.
I just want to add that I spoke to Cheryl a couple of days ago, and she has some great plans for where she wants this podcast to go and to spread the truth. It's got to be encouraging that there are more people out there that want to do these projects that reveal the truth rather than the tabloid sensationalism that a lot of media outlets seem to go with. I think you're really going to like the next few episodes. I'm completely up to date so far with Cheryl and June's podcast, and the level of detail that they go into is incredible. The amount of work that they've put into this project. I'm learning things all the time. I'm sure there are, most of the contents of the show are going to be things you already know, having experienced it firsthand. But it's definitely worth spreading things like this to get the truth out there.
Oh, yes, of course. And that's what's exciting about all of this in terms of the future generations, is that I do believe that, Michael Jackson's one of the few people that the more you do the research, the more you realize he's innocent. And I think that's what has to come across. That's what we have to get people to do, is just do the homework. And so with the docu-series or with other docu-series or other documentaries, they're all being effective because more and more people are learning the truth in that way. And I've seen it different comment sections and I've said this before, but I can tell the difference between fans commenting and then the general public commenting on Michael. And it's not only shifted in that way, it's become, there's a lot of regular people saying, oh no, those were all lies, or this and that. And I think a lot of it has come down to, they've seen some of their own heroes be falsely accused of certain things, or realize that false accusations are not as uncommon as people think they are, especially if you're a celebrity or if you have a target on your back. And so that has been a revelation that 2-3 years ago, it was, oh, you have to believe everyone. Now it's like, okay, hold on 1 second. Let's take a pause. Let's look at the facts. Michael didn't get that luxury with that 2019 piece of trash. And that was a nice version of what I was going to say in terms of how I should call it. But yeah, that's how I think about that.
Well, Taj, we are here for you. We are just so excited to continue to hear about developments. And thank you for sharing as much as you did about your process, because I know you didn't really want to talk about it. And we just appreciate what you did share. So thank you.
I realize I'm becoming a broken record too, because I'm like, oh, it's coming. And I understand the skepticism. So that's why I'm not going hard on anyone, because I understand it. But I want those same people that were rooting against me to be just as vocal when it does come out and does do what I promised and said it would do. Then it's like, okay, where are you now? In that way. And some of them will be like, hey, I was wrong. And I'll appreciate that. And I'll be no problem.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Taj, for all those updates. Amazing. We are cheering you on. We can't wait to hear more. And to move towards closing out our big Christmas extravaganza, we wanted to reflect just a little bit on the year that was. Now, it was a pretty crazy year. I will say that 75% of our team had little tiny people running around our houses, and it made things a little wild and a little hard to sometimes get those episodes done, but we still put together what I feel is an amazing, amazing season. We had a few less of the regular fan chat episodes, but we have some incredible interviews. I mean, we had Brett Barnes, we had Marcus Kabata about Sonic Fantasy. We had our John Barnes roundtable where we had Matt Forger, Brad Buxer, Brad Sundberg talking about the memory of the amazing John Barnes. We had Violet Booker. It's been incredible. We had our Q&A with both Charlies. I would love to hear from you guys about some favorite moments from this year. Any, memories, any favorite episodes. Love to hear what your thoughts. Maybe Jamon, would you like to start?
Sure. I mean, I feel like this is our strongest season ever. I'm more proud of season 8, I think, than any other season, because with season 8, we were able to put out a great run of episodes amidst some chaos that was going on at our house. I mean, I suppose when in 2019 that was pretty chaotic as well. I got to say that, but this year in particular has just been a game changer with all the kids we've had come into the MJCast families and trying to manage it, and that's never been more apparent than right now. Actually, with us trying to get out these episodes in the next week. But it's been a really interesting season. Like the start, we got off to a little bit of a rocky start, I'll say, because we put out our Janet Jackson documentary roundtable, and Charlie Thomson, you went full Charlie Thomson mode in that episode when speaking about the doco, and that caused us a little bit of interesting interaction on Twitter. But apart from that the start of the season, since then it just went from strength to strength to strength. We got to celebrate so many things this season. We did a great roundtable episode where we celebrated finally the Casio tracks from the Michael album are gone. A year ago, we were probably talking with you, Taj, about your thoughts on whether that would even happen in the future. And just a few months later, it did happen. So that was a huge... Yeah, thank goodness. A huge moment for celebration. We got to interview some people that were extremely close to Michael, whether it be his longtime chief of security at Neverland, Violet Gaetan Booker, Brett Barnes. It's been an amazing season, and I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of all of you guys and us being able to work together as a team to accomplish this. So thank you.
And thank you, Jamon, for always being our absolutely fearless leader who makes it all happen. We would not exist without you, and we so appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for putting up for my random phone calls at all hours, panicking. What do I do here?
Carter, did you want to chime in about your favorite moments?
Yeah, first things first, I want to say once again, echo what I said last year, which is thank you for having me on board. It's been an honor and a privilege to be able to edit some of these episodes, be on some of the calls, and for you all to entrust me with presenting a couple of episodes, one of which at the time of recording has not yet been published, but our Thriller 40 episode, to be given the responsibility of hosting an episode of my favorite album, the world's biggest selling album, was just, I can't explain to you the level of gratitude that I have for allowing me to do that. In terms of highlights from the season, the Janet Jackson documentary it was great to be on a show with the girls from the Janet episode. I learned some things about Janet that I didn't know before. Have some monumental things, like you said, the John Barnes roundtable, the removal of the Casio tracks, that discussion with Damien, that's a pretty monumental event in the posthumous history of Michael Jackson. Obviously, to host the British Q&A with Charlie and Summer Habib was just an absolute pleasure. But for me, the highlight of the season has to be the Brett Barnes episode, purely because this is a guy who has never wavered from his story, never wavered from the truth, has been a staunch defender of Michael's for many years, has only spoken to the media previously once in 1993, and to trust the MJCast to tell his story and to get that out there, I think is huge testament, not just to Brett, but also, to Jamon and yourself and Charlie to be able to secure that interview and to get that story out there. The only disappointment with that is that it didn't gain more traction in the media, but then given their narrative, that's not really too much of a surprise. And Brett, if you're listening to this, I just want to say a huge thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And we hope to expand on that actually and hear more of your experiences with Michael. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you'd like to come on again in future. And from a personal point of view, I've also had the opportunity to meet some people in the Michael community that I've spoken to many times over the internet. I met Q recently a few weeks ago in Sydney. I met Damien Shields, as I mentioned earlier. But not only that, I got to cuddle Charlie Thomson in London.
All right.
Hey.
A highlight.
We had a lovely evening out. So I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Taj, but we took our baby daughter over to the UK to surprise my parents. We didn't tell them that we were coming.
Oh, that's awesome.
We filmed that, and I put that on my YouTube channel. And part of that trip that we were over there, we had a few days in London, and we organised to have a wonderful dinner with Charlie. And my wife took our daughter back to the hotel when she was too tired, and Charlie and I just walked the streets of London, just talking, not necessarily about Michael Jackson, just getting to know each other. So, Charlie, thank you for making the journey into London to come and see us. It was wonderful.
It was a privilege. It was great to see you. And hopefully it won't be too long before we can see each other again. Havenhurst 2023.
Oh.
You can fly yourself.
I would love to. Yeah, well, that's a personal milestone, nothing to do with Michael Jackson, but I obtained a pilot's license this year. So on top of all of that's been going on with the MJCast and work, to have that in the background as well was just amazing. Taj, hopefully I'll take you flying one day.
Yeah.
That didn't sound, you didn't sound convinced, Taj.
I hate flying, so that's why I was like, yeah.
Don't worry, it's not just the thought of flying that terrifies some people, it's the thought of flying with me, so you're not alone in that trepidation. Don't worry.
I was taking you out of the equation. I was actually
Why don't we do wing walking? Me and Taj, one on each wing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Charlie in the pilot seat.
Now, we'd have to film that episode.
This has gone off in a interesting direction.
Yeah.
Anything else, Carter, that you wanted to add?
No, other than just to say, Taj, pleasure to talk to you again. I wish you all the best with your documentary and all the interviews that you're doing. And if you do make it over here to Australia, please do get in touch, whether it's here in Sydney, up in Brisbane to see Jamon, or Melbourne, or wherever it is you're heading to. Just let us know.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, definitely will.
And Charlie, did you want to comment on any of your favorite moments from this year?
Well, I'll be raking over the same ground, but clearly Brett was a huge milestone and something that I didn't really think would ever happen. Mm-hmm. And he was incredibly candid, and the fact that he said he placed no limits on us about what we could ask was brilliant. Mm-hmm. And I can't think of anything important that I should have put to him that I didn't. Yeah, I think that was pretty major to bag the Brett interview. I think it's just this kind of the MJCast extended family. It was nice to have Kristina back on for an episode, for the Violet episode. It's great to have Sam Habib on for the Q&A, Damien for the Casio tracks removal. I think Q came back for a couple of episodes. James Alay, it's always good to have him on the show. Did Shawn come on this season?
Thriller 40.
Yeah.
Oh, I've not heard it yet. Okay, well, it's always good to have Shawn Shackelford on as well. I love hearing all those guys. They've always got something great to contribute.
Yeah.
And I look forward to hearing from them. And then the other thing I think that was a huge success was the John Barnes Roundtable. I just thought that whole episode was absolutely fascinating. Really, really brilliant. And, of course, it led to the Matt Forger special, which is yet to be released at time of recording this episode. Mm-hmm. But I was involved in the Matt Forger episodes, and that was a privilege as well.
Well, it was meant to only be about 2 to 3 hours, and how long did we speak to him for in total?
I would say it was got to have been over 7 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the listeners won't hear all of it, but you know, when you consider the pre and post interview chatting, it might even be 8 hours.
And let's not forget as well that that's a milestone episode. 150 episodes for the MJCast is something that particularly Jamon and Elise, and you as well, Charlie, should be congratulated on, having been involved pretty much from the start.
And
well, I was a passenger in the beginning. It was Jamon and Q and TJ, not Taj's TJ, but the other TJ,
yeah.
who we miss.
Mm-hmm.
And was Damien a co-founder?
Yep, there was 4 of us, me, TJ, Q, and Damien. And it sort of only launched, it just launched with Q and I, but for months behind the scenes, it was Damien and TJ doing a lot of heavy lift and getting it up and running. And yeah, rest in peace, TJ. It was his birthday yesterday. So
God bless TJ. I loved him.
Yeah. Also, another highlight for me is the fact that Taj, your uncle Jackie, submitted the little audio intro snippet for episode 150, wishing us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wishing us well. And that was so special to hear that.
How cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
when that came through, it was going to be a long shot because we reached out to him to see if he'd be keen, and through friend of the show Yannicka, who obviously is just an amazing person. It was a long shot, but it came back. He replied with it within, I think, a few hours of us asking. It was just like, wow.
Wow. Yeah. That's great. I love that, though.
He is such a nice guy. Jackie is just, when I met your uncles, when I saw the Jacksons perform at the Gold Coast a few years ago, and I met them in like a hallway of the venue where they had performed, Jackie, I mean, all of them were so special to talk to. But when I spoke to Jackie, he just sort of like locked onto me with 100% attention and just eye contact. And he was just like, he just very, very humbly and quietly just said, thank you so much for everything you guys do at the MJCast. I was like, wow, that just means the world.
Yeah. Never know who's listening.
Never know.
Well, Jackie, Marlon, Tito, Jermaine, if you are listening, Randy, and you want to come on, please get in touch.
Let's go. We're ready.
Latoya.
I'll never forget the time, Taj, you asked me, you DM'd me and said, give me a call. And then when we were on the phone, you said, how would you like to interview a member of the Jackson 5? When you first set up the interview with your dad, I was like, whoa, I got to pinch myself. Is this really happening?
Yeah, that seems like so long ago, but yeah, that was exciting.
Yeah.
That was episode 50, right?
Episode 50 for Tito time. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. We love Tito time. So yeah, I so agree with you guys that Brett Barnes, phenomenal. I think it will go down in history as one of our most important episodes. For me personally, also that John Barnes tribute roundtable. I do want to give a shout out to Brad Sundberg. He really did help us put that together, and it's led to so many other things. So thank you, Brad. We really appreciated your help there. John Barnes will always have a very, very dear place in my heart, and that episode is incredible. The stories, the memories, the energy between the guys talking about him is, I will never forget it. It's one I'll listen to many times. And then just the Violet episode, the Violet Gayton Booker, huge thank you there to Velo Kristina, who has, I have to say, just, time and time again, since she's become more or less a regular guest on the show, she has proven herself to be just such a sophisticated, well-spoken, educated fan. And Kristina, you make a difference on every episode you're on, and I really thank you for that. And it was so much fun to talk to Violet with Kristina. And that one too, I have gotten more comments from people on the Violet episode just about how much they appreciated her insights and stories. So Violet, huge thank you to you. And that was also one of my favorites. But it's been, this has been a mighty, mighty season. We've done incredible stuff. I felt like, looking back, I was like, oh man, we kind of maybe had a little bit of a slower season, but it really wasn't. It was major episodes, and I'm just so proud of all of them. And so it's been a great year. And also, I mean, hey, look, season 8, that's crazy. Like,
oh God,
we're going to be at 10 seasons before we know it, 10 years of the MJ cast before we blink our eyes. And on that note, Jamon, would you like to talk about the season ahead, season 9, and any plans we have percolating?
We don't have a whole lot of plans really, I guess. I mean, we just want to keep doing what we're doing. Like, we're at the stage now of the MJCast where every once in a while, people come to us wanting to be interviewed, whether it be collaborators, and sometimes people approach us and say, hey, can I come on the show? Which is just crazy when that happens. It's like, what? Normally in the early days, it was us chasing a lot of people. But so we're hoping to lock in more interviews with Jackson family members, with people who knew and worked with Michael professionally. We want to put more roundtable episodes out discussing milestone moments or albums or projects that Michael did. There's just so many things we still want to do. Carter, you and I were just talking the other day on the phone about how we've tended to focus a lot on Michael's later years recording, from the 90s onwards or the 80s onwards, mainly because all of those people that worked with Michael are still so young and ready to talk in a lot of cases. But, there's a whole new world we need to delve into as the MJCast. We need to go back to the 70s and start digging into the Jacksons and the Jackson 5 and talking to collaborators who worked with the brothers in the studio in that era. So there's still so much we have to do at the MJCast. And it feels like even though we're 7 years in, or whatever it is, 8 years in, that in a lot of ways we're just getting started because there's still so many stories to uncover. So I'm excited for next year, and we're going to work really hard to make it as good or better than any other season we've done yet.
Cool. So an annual feature and one of my favorites we have at the MJCast is our blooper reel. So those are our little mistakes we've captured throughout the year. They always give me a chuckle, I know. So let's go ahead and launch into that right now.
Hello and welcome. There's a car going past.
Bloopers.
Matt, what we like to do at the MJCast is really go back in time. Sorry, my 5-year-old just came into the room. 1 second. You've got a fever. Oh, that's no good. Maybe go talk to Mama. Can you shut the door? Okay, that sounded like the door from Thriller, but okay.
She went to work as an investigator for Robert Sanger. Why can't I say that? Sorry. Robert Sanger does not sit in my mouth well. This is a quick but an important one. Let me say that again. I'm gonna just
because it's a deluxe, so it's got an extra disc, so it's extra large.
Okay, and I'm just going to give a bit of lead time again. This is going to be a fun edit, Carter. Marcos, on your website, we know. Sorry, I'll restart that again.
Hello. No, I think is that now? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, that was a huge adventure. One day I just got an email from the state and
oh yeah, he's dropped out completely.
Such a cliffhanger too. One day I got an email from the estate and they said, oh.
I was just about to say,
John Branca's outside ripping his phone cord out.
Here we go. Yay, we're recording. Hooray! Now let's all pray for no tech issues. It's been one of those mornings, but it's good. I'm thrilled. I'm very happy. Okay, so moving along, we do have a couple of big anniversaries this year, and this is going to transition us into our main discussion topic for this episode. First of all, we do have... What is going on?
Are you peeing, Carter?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Are you pouring more tea? What's going on?
FYI, we're at about 2 hours and 8 minutes so far.
Yeah, we're
wrapping up.
We're gonna wrap.
This is the farewells because I am starving for lunch.
I need to pee so bad. I'm gonna fill my toilet with urine.
Oh my god. Okay, you guys, let's wrap up.
Jamon, stick that in the outtakes.
Do you need us to clap or not?
Oh, if you want, we can do it for a bit of fun. 3, 2, 1.
That was a terrible clap.
That was. I think there's only ever been one good clap ever.
That's terrible.
Are we leaving that clap or are we doing another one?
That's a bunch of white people at a concert getting offbeat within like 3 or 4 claps.
That is so true.
Okay.
Oh, when they do it in ballads, it's the worst. It's like, why are you even clapping in a ballad? You must be putting the singer off. Like they're trying to sing their song and you're clapping like offbeat. What's going on?
Next question has come in anonymously from Damien Shields.
For additional funding. So the crowdfunding...
Sorry, you've got a dog going off in the background there.
I know. There's nothing I can do about that. I've not got a gun. That is not my dog. It's somewhere down the street. We'll just have to live with it. No, it's fucked off now.
I am your toy. I am your boy.
Paul, you got an audio problem there.
Yeah, Paul, that came out very...
You've got some static.
Static?
Oh dear. You sound like a bumblebee.
Give me 2 seconds.
Bumblebee. Is it legitimately what he sounds like?
Damien Shields is equal to the Casio tracks. And like there's you
calling me fake?
Well, no, like you are like if you are the resource. DamienShields.com.
Just looking it up on IMBD now.
And then I played it, and then a couple places the girl stumbles and stutters. I said, I could take that out.
Marcos, I wish I was in the Canary Islands.
Carter, you're going to need a month to edit this thing.
Tell me about it.
Intro me again, and I'll just do it naturally in response to this.
All right.
Charlie Carter's hating this.
He's hating it. All right.
Brett, while he's writing that out, what Jamon, you and I usually do is we try and take a funny quote and use it as the title for the show. Like, for example, with Shawn Shackelford, he was talking about how he went to a concert, a Rick James concert, and he said his father was ready to go. So that ended up being the title. I would love it if we did it with this episode, and the title I would choose is I Have Never Been in a Suitcase. That's the funniest thing I've heard this week.
Yeah, I can't believe I had to actually say that, but yeah, that's a good title. Oh, wow. It just goes to show you what some people say. Like, just make up crazy. Who put someone in a suitcase?
Oh, God. All the behind the scenes stuff.
Great. Well, do we want to go into any other thank yous?
I got a few little thank yous I want to give before we share socials and sign off for the year. But I just want to acknowledge everyone who's made the MJCast possible over the years. You know, you guys, especially my fellow teammates, Elise, Carter, Charlie. You know, I want to just acknowledge Q as well, who, even though isn't a day-to-day member of the team right now, we still chat all the time about what's going on at the MJCast and where we can go in the future. And yeah, I just really appreciate Q so much. I want to acknowledge James Alay. He is a team member of the MJCast. He handles all of our back-end stuff to do with our website. He is amazing and so technically adept at everything he does and keeps the show going. I want to give a special, like an extra special thank you to Jason Garcia, who over at MJ Radio does a great job there. But just without fail, anytime things get super duper complicated on the editing end at the MJCast and we get real stuck with getting shows out, whether it be for family reasons or whatever, Jason is always there. He knows when things are going on. He texts and says, "Hey, can I step in?" And he has done that in the last week. And Jason's edited one of our episodes for this final end of season run. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts, Jason, for stepping in and helping out. He has saved our bacon on a number of occasions. Frequent guests, Shawn Shackelford, Damien Shields, Velo Kristina. Love it when you guys are on. Can't wait to have you guys back for season 9. Also to Taj and really the entire Jackson family. This show wouldn't be possible without the incredible musical and artistic legacy of the Jackson family. And thank you for embracing the MJCast and coming on, and we just love that. We love that. Michael Jackson collaborators from the studio, whether it be dancers, choreographers, musicians, producers, stylists, just anyone who worked with Michael over the years and has a story to share. We know that even though Michael was a genius of astronomical proportions in his own right, his genius was added to by all of these other geniuses in their field who he attracted to help build on his own artistic statement. So we love to talk to those people. I also want to thank people who get random calls and texts from me. You guys know who you are. People like John Cameron, who I sometimes, if a special episode's coming up or a guest and I want to know what to ask them, I go to people and I ask, you know, what should I ask this person? So thank you very much to those people as well. And lastly, I want to give 2 last thank yous. One to our listeners, because this show wouldn't be possible without all of the people who engage with the MJCast, all the thousands of people around the world, you know, that listen to our show in all corners of the world, the emails we get, the messages we get. We love them all. Thank you so much. And our deepest thanks to actually our partners. So this show does take a lot of time to put out in our personal lives. We all have full-time jobs. We all have families. But we do it, you know, after hours, really. And the people that allow that to happen so graciously are our partners and our family members. So I want to say thank you to my wife, Lee. I want to say thank you to Carter's wife, Jess. I want to say thank you to Elise's husband, Jared, to Q's partner as well. I want to say thank you so much for allowing space and time for this show to happen, because sometimes it does encroach on family time, but we believe that we're doing something amazing for Michael, for the Jackson family, and for all of the fans of the Jacksons. So thank you very much. Very last, we're probably harder to reach than ever before.
Got to be honest with that. In terms of emails, DMs, getting to us is probably pretty hard in terms of hearing back from us. So listeners, if you're emailing us and not getting a reply, we just want to say we read everything that comes through and we want to reply to everything that comes through, but sometimes it just gets a little bit hard with all the commitments we have with our family and work. So we're going to work harder at doing that in 2023, but thank you for all the communication that comes in. There are my thank yous.
Thank you for all those beautiful thank yous, Jamon. They were so well said. And I just, really agree with you on all that and send out also my own huge thank yous to everyone you mentioned, everyone who makes the MJCast possible. This is an amazing project and I'm so honored to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to close out here. And before we give our socials and everything, I want to mention one small but significant development with the MJCast. As listeners know, our show has always been free. It does cost us money to run, and those costs keep increasing. And while we have no plans to make money off the show, we would at least like to be able to cover our expenses. In the past, we have explored options such as running ads or doing sponsorships. For personal reasons, we have decided not to do a program like Patreon just because it's not quite the right match for us. But our new development is that we do now have a donation page on our website. It's at themjcast.com/support. If you go to that link, it will take you to our PayPal page where you can donate whatever amount you want. So if you happen to have really enjoyed one of our episodes and you have the means and are inclined, consider donating the cost of even, say, just a cup of coffee. These donations go directly to helping us cover the expenses of hosting our website, purchasing recording equipment, and many other things that help keep our show running. Again, we don't make any profit off of this. It's simply to help keep our costs down a bit so that we can focus on making a great show for you. So if you have the means, you'll find that link at themjcast.com/support. And thanks in advance to anyone who donates. We hugely appreciate it. And with that in mind, otherwise, beyond our donation page, you can, of course, continue to find us everywhere around social media and the internet. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, at the MJCast. We're also, of course, at the MJCast.com. As Jamon said, we try hard to reply to everything we can. If we ever take a little while, feel free to ping us and we'll get back to you. We always appreciate every comment. We appreciate every review. Subscribe to the show on any podcast app of your choice, be it Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts. And keep listening. We will keep putting out great content and can't wait for 2023. And thank you again, Taj, for joining us. Taj, do you want to let people know where they can find you?
I think it's Taj Jackson 3 on Twitter. I don't even know for sure. I think it's Taj Jackson 3 on Twitter and Taj Jackson on Instagram.
Yeah, and I would say Twitter is your main platform, really, right?
Yeah, and then on TikTok, which I haven't updated, I think it's Taj Jackson. I'm not sure.
We're going to wait for more TikToks from you.
Yeah, well, if I get the numbers up, I'll be inspired. I'm kidding.
And Taj, just because I know you're so modest and you don't like to say it so much, but also listeners, if you just head over to gofundme.com and you can search for Rewriting History, which is the name of Taj's upcoming docu-series, which is going to be all about the true history of Michael Jackson. You can still donate money to that to make it an even better product when it does come out. We're 100% believers, Taj, in your project. We can't wait for it to come, and we hope all fans continue to rally around it and support it.
Thank you.
Head over to GoFundMe to make it a reality.
Thank you.
Carter, where can people find you?
Okay, I'm on Twitter and Instagram as Charlie W. Carter. So it's at Charlie W. Carter. I'm also on Instagram as at Alpha Charlie Photos. And if you are interested in seeing my video of my flight over Neverland, and when we did surprise our parents earlier this year, I'm Alpha Charlie on YouTube as well. And I also want to just add to the thank yous, if I might. Thank you to Elise, Jamon, and Charlie once again for having me on the team. Taj for joining us today. And I was hoping to say this before she got home, but my wife and daughter have just arrived back home. Just want to say thank you very much. I love you very much. Thank you for allowing me to do what I do on this podcast.
That was so sweet. I loved it. And Charlie Thomson, where can people find you on the internet?
I don't have any children to thank. It's I'm on Twitter at CE Thomson. There's no P in Thompson. And I'm actually now on Instagram at the insistence of Konstantinos, who builds the Havenhurst maze. So I just had to check what my username is. So it's CE Thomson Journo, JOURNO. I mean, I'm not very interesting on either of them, but I'm there if you want to follow me.
Did you get stuck in the maze and he wouldn't let you out until you agreed to join Instagram?
No, he just kept pestering me. He did manhandle me into that maze though, because I don't enjoy those mazes. I mean, I don't know if they're supposed to be enjoyable, but I definitely don't find them enjoyable. I had to leave Universal Studios Halloween horror thingamajig after a couple of hours because I found it too horrible. But I mean, the maze, clearly it was very, very good. It did what it was supposed to do, which is just too scary. But anyway, Konstantinos is brilliant. So shout out to Konstantinos and Rashid while I think of it as well. Anyway, thanks guys. Thank you everyone. Thank you I'm about to lose my voice completely, but I love you all.
I know, poor Charlie. You have to go drink some tea and go to bed. It's also extremely late your time. And as for me, I am, or Jamon, I don't think you gave yours yet. I apologize.
Oh, yeah, okay. If people want to find me, it's just at Jamon Bull, JAMONBULL on Instagram and Twitter. I like to share Michael Jackson opinions and thoughts and stuff on there as well. I'm a little bit freer with my thoughts on my personal accounts than I am on the official MJCast account, just because I don't want to bore our listeners with my rants. But yeah, if you want to follow me, that would be great.
And I am at Elise Capron on all platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I really have been kind of MIA from Twitter most of this year, except for occasional stuff on the MJCast page because parenthood has taken over my life, but I'll be back there eventually. And thanks to everybody for your understanding and patience. And I think that otherwise, that's pretty much a wrap. This was so much fun. And we just want to wish everybody a really, really happy Christmas and New Year and whatever other holidays you celebrate, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. And we are looking forward to the next year ahead. We will keep you guys posted on our release schedule. And just thank you again for your support. We look forward to future engagement, and I get to do my little sign off, which is stay bad.
Keep Michaeling.
Carter, did you have a sign off?
No, I don't. I don't have one.
Well, you have to come up with one.
Work on one. Come up with one that's like a crossover between Michael Jackson and aviation. Did he say anything in Moonwalker about like flying, or I don't know?
I can tell a terrible dad joke on the topic. Michael Jackson would have made a terrible pilot because he could never land. But I can't say that every episode.
No, you can't.
I'll have to come up with one, but I don't have one. I think I'll just say thank you and Happy New Year. Happy Christmas and Happy New Year.
Charlie, do you have a sign off you'd like to do?
This is the first I'm hearing of it, and no, I don't.